Okay, well, it's 8:30, so thank you, everybody, for coming back. Appreciate it. I hope you had an okay hotel room. I hope the pillow and the mattress took mercy on you last night at the hotel room. Hope it wasn't too hard, too bad. It's a gloomy, awful morning out there. It's really depressing. That's all I could do to get from the door to the car. It's like gray and cloudy and rainy and muggy and hot and so it's kind of nice to be inside. So, thank you all. Bruce Porter will be joining us in a few minutes. He's got to take a conference call. Just a few reminders about the microphones. The folks in the booth reminded me last time that not everybody is always necessarily turning on and off their mics, and that makes it impossible for them to do the recording. So please be conscientious of that as we go. My thanks to those of you last night who responded to my little email poll about courses for your field of study. I've distributed a handout about that from the people that I heard from last night. As has already been pointed out, I made an error, so the vote counts are correct because I counted it by course number, not necessarily by title, but I made an error. Math 2413, line 5 of my list here should be 4 semester credit hours, not 3. Calculus 1. And the line right below that, Math 2414, that says Calculus 1, that should read Calculus 2, 4 semester credit hours. Okay. And then further down where it says Math 2314, Calculus 2, that should be 3 semester credit hours. So my apologies for the errors on that. But I was going by the course numbers, so the vote tally should be correct. So it seems like there's more uniformity based on this than maybe it would appear that there would have been yesterday. So hopefully this will be a good launching pad for us to nail down the courses. Here are the things that we need to cover today. We got to move quickly. We need, of course, to determine the courses that we want to put in the field of study. We have to discuss accrediting issues, ABET accrediting issues, or anything else like that that's relevant to what standards are going to be guiding what courses we put in the field of study, because we don't want to mess that up. We also need to take a look at the related programs in computer science. We need to pull up that information. I gave you that sheet about the other programs in Texas and various CIP codes. And we need to be very clear about which programs and what CIP codes are covered by this field of study and which ones aren't, because that will certainly come up, and we need to give clear guidance to institutions about which programs are included. And then finally, at the end of the day, we need to talk a little bit about the 30-day comment period and how that works. So we need to move quickly today. Yesterday, we covered a lot of the general issues about field of study, which was very important ground to cover, but we don't really have time to go back over all that today. So I think we need to let those issues lie. I think they were well layered out. We need to get down to the brass tacks of actually getting the field of study constructed today. So with that, I will turn it over to our co-chairs to get us started.
So it looks like we have everyone agreed on the physics courses in the field of study. It didn't seem like there was any discussion about that. And last night, my faculty were suggesting for things like where we also require chemistry, then perhaps we could do that via restrictions on the core curriculum, is what they were thinking. So so I think every four-year school, I think it said they were in favor of those 2 physics classes. Is that correct?
Actually, I don't know. I don't know that my vote was for that. We don't require physics 2. We just require it on the computer engineering route.
But if a student came in with it,
it will count for the core.
Yeah, okay. So, and then the next most popular issues were, I guess, was the sort of the programming fundamentals 2, which is sort of the first really object-oriented, I guess, programming class that most programs, looked like one program left that off their list, but So I guess the question is, if that were in, if 1437 is in the field of study, is that going to cause any issues for anyone? I mean, our faculty said they would use that for, like, our first class. And I think everyone teaches that course, right, in the two-year schools, right? So,
So just a clarification, and sorry, I know we talked about it yesterday. We could take it for a 3-hour course, even if it's a 4-hour course, and not have to use that last hour?
Typical thing is to say 3 hours go for the 3-hour class and 1 hour for free elective. Is that acceptable?
I think, yeah, I mean, we have, our curriculum has more electives in it now than it used to, so we could, but our class is 4 hours anyway, so that's not an issue for us personally, but,
And the other one, can we take it as the pre-course? That's not in our degree plan, but it is required to get into the next class?
1436?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was sort of less popularity there. I guess the question there is whether that should be in the field of study or not, I guess, that we're not going to, in the sense, we're not going to require a student to take that because we're requiring them to take the class after that. The issue is if they take it, then that's credits you got to squirrel away somewhere. But like University of Houston, that's in your curriculum now, 1436, right?
That's correct.
And
Same
in
here.
Tarleton as well. And, okay, and so because we do have I know for A&M, because if a student comes in and we kind of quiz them, we'll send them to one of our courses for non-majors, but they still get we still somehow find a place to use those credit hours as out, so we would still do that for us. I'm not sure about UT in that regard. What about the other four-year schools? Can you take 1436?
Yes, we have it in the curriculum right now.
Okay,
So we'll find
all
a
right.
place for it. Yeah.
So that also seems like a class everybody could take and use it somewhere. It's even, like for us, it wouldn't be one of the major courses, it would be like one of the elective courses then, right?
So that will transform in a hidden requirement for 1437, I'm sorry?
Well,
Is that
since
what I'm
the
at-
prereq for 1437 is 1436, but, so some schools like ours, we don't have that in our requirements, but some other schools have 1436 in their current curriculum, so they would want it in the field of study. In our case, we wouldn't use it for the major requirement. We would squirrel it away in some elective class, because it's not in our current requirements now. So we would treat it the same way we treat if a student comes in and they don't know enough, we send them to like we have like a Python, a Java, kind of a C++, the non-major courses for people that start knowing nothing. And then they use that credit in that class for one of their other free electives.
But just to be clear, the way it's stated now with 1436 being required for 1437, I mean, unless we change the prerequisite for 1437, I don't see how we can kick this out of the field of study. Right?
Well,
I mean, it's
Well,
a
the issue is
prerequisite.
whether
Where would they take it unless it's a high school class? So,
yeah, the issue is whether it would be, what are you doing with those credits is really what it amounts to, right? That if it's not in the field of study, then it's just like it's like any other course being transferred, right? If it's in the field of study, then it comes as part of the package.
that's part of my question. My question was very technical. Let's say that we take 1436 out of the field of study. Can we still say that 1437 has it as a prerequisite?
That was my concern.
yes, we have, for example, calculus has prerequisites of pre-calculus, algebra, trig, and those are not in the field of study. So
But calculus is conceivably taught in high schools. 1436 is not a class, to my knowledge, that's offered in high schools.
Oh, absolutely, I see it all the time.
It is?
Routinely, in fact, they almost always take it these days. I have to admit, I have no place in my program for 1436, because to me, it's a pre-course. To me, it's like pre-calculus.
Right, I'm just saying because we have more electives, we have been effectively doing it for students that needed what we call remedial work, right?
But if I don't have a place in my curriculum for it. I don't have free electives at the freshman, sophomore level.
So what do you do if someone comes in and is not quite ready for 1437?
We have a course, but it's not part of the major.
Does not count towards requirements.
It does not require, yes.
So if a community college student had taken 1436 and transferred to you, you would still count it as 1436 at your university, but it's not part of the 121-hour degree plan?
Exactly, except that I don't take it directly. I make them take a placement test to show that they can.
I see.
But if they pass the placement test, then they're on to what is essentially 1437.
Texas State has the same mechanism as you guys.
But the issue is if you leave it out, okay, so the question is if we left it out of the field of study, I know for us it doesn't have any impact because we don't have it as a requirement, but for the schools that have it as a requirement today, if it's not in the field of study, it's just hanging around there as a separate course they took.
Yeah, it will be another, I mean, we have students who start in pre-calculus, and that's a hidden prerequisite, so I guess it will go the same way.
But you would just, but so if they took 1436, you could still transfer that course in to meet your course requirement, just like any other individual transfer course, right?
Well, no, because we don't count pre-calculus for our field of study.
No, but I'm saying if they took 1436
Yeah.
in community college, but it's not in the field of study, you would still, so a student came in and they took 1436 and that was it, you would still transfer 1436 in to
I
meet
don't know,
your
I have
first
to think
course.
about it and count hours and, all that.
Well, we
Do you
need to have
accept it
some
now?
consistency. We cannot accept some students with 1436 and have that give credit for the degree, for the major, and some other ones who don't have it. It's an issue of consistency, it seems to me.
Okay, so the issue.
Either we keep it or we leave it out.
Okay, because the question is, like, can a student come in with 1437 and not effectively know 1436? Because 1436 is a prereq to 1437.
Yeah, most probably.
So if we left it out, then if they didn't take it, it wouldn't affect us. If somehow they didn't take it, but then that would be an issue for you if they
It's gonna be an issue for
and
us.
you if they, and
That's why I asked if we still leave 1436 as a prerequisite for 1437.
Yes, it would be, but what I'm saying is that we don't want to take it 1436 for a course in our major. We have no place for it. So those four-year schools that have 1436 as part of their degree requirements can still have it and still accept it.
And now that
It's just not forced onto us because it's a pre-course to us.
And then by the time they get to you, they will have already had 1437, and we would have had them have the prerequisite if they needed it or not.
To answer your previous question, that the 120 hours, so we do count pre-calculus in the 120 hours, so really it would be the same thing. We would count that, we would count 1436 as part of the 120 hours.
But I guess the question is, if it's not in the field of study, if a student comes in FOS complete and they somehow didn't take 1436, like, we don't enforce a lot of our prereqs, it's more advice to the students. So if they could do that, then that would forbid you from requiring 1436 of their FOS complete, right?
This is the law,
Unless
apparently.
the-
I mean, I don't understand the
Unless
question.
1437, if they're FS complete, then they would have already had 1437, and they wouldn't have needed 1436, or they would have already had it.
So,
Yeah, or they had AP credit for it, or they had, something like that.
yeah, but think about for math, there's procedure. Everybody has procedures in place how to deal with whether or not they're ready for calculus. Exams, test scores that you've already done. So there's all these procedures in place. If we decide to do this, that would force everybody to make sure they have those procedures in place for 1436. Everybody have to have some. The bigger schools already have them. They have a lot of staff. For the smaller schools, they don't. It's really going to affect the two-year schools more than anything because they're now, a student comes in, look at these field of study, it's not supposed to be there. They're going to have to tell their students, no, you have to take this. And so I think that's where it's really going to affect. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it, but I think that's really where it comes down to. It's going to force us to create these procedures that allow us to test for 1436, whether or not they're ready to go into 36 or 37.
So what do the community colleges do about the prereq?
We require them, and it may end up being more than 60 hours to get a degree.
Okay, so you enforce your prereqs.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But isn't it the same kind of procedure as with calculus?
We don't have those procedures in place.
For calculus?
We have them for calculus. We do not have them for 1436. That requires a lot of effort on our staff to be able to, one, determine what is at or create an exam. I mean, with math, there's lots of pre-existing tests that we can use, right? But for computer science, there isn't. Unless we use, like the AP stuff, but nobody really likes the AP stuff.
But you teach 1436, right? Yes. Couldn't you use like the final exam for 1436 as a placement test into 1437?
I'm not saying we can't do it. I'm saying we don't have those procedures in place. We would have to do those, and I think all the junior colleges would as well.
But I guess the question is for the students who took 1437 in the community college, by implication, they have the knowledge of 1436 because the community colleges are enforcing the prereqs.
But this defeats the purpose of creating the same experience for all students. Students who go to community colleges will still have to take 1436, right? The whole point was to give them the same experience as was shown yesterday.
Well, see, we're assuming that the students acquire that knowledge in high school or some other way. It's not one of our required courses because it's a prerequisite to us to come into the major.
Well, and I think that depends on the area too, because I know out of the 24 high schools around us, there's one that offers 1436. So majority of the ones around us don't even look at programming.
Right, so effectively today, we don't care how the student acquired that prerequisite knowledge to go into, because we have a test we can give them anyway, to go into the first class that we teach. And so most of them are getting it in high school, but some fraction are getting it, they are getting it from community colleges as well. And so it's just, the point is it's not one of our courses in our curriculum because we're assuming they have it before they arrive. But how they get it, I don't care.
It seems to me that if we left it out of the FOS, and most probably the students from a two-year college may graduate with 63 credit hours, even though in that case we are going to accept 60.
Or in our case, I think that we would still include it just as an elective in their field of study degree plan because, we have to have their core, we have to have their field of study courses, and we have room, in our case, I don't know if every school would, but we would have room for that 1436 because that's what we do now.
Yeah, we'd probably do something similar by basically just, like you said, keeping with the prereqs because most of our, probably 99% of our students would not be able to handle 1437 without 1436.
And then we have had a rare case where if they've already had 1436 or really felt like they could go straight into 1437, we would just substitute another course, let them take another course, but still meet the requirements.
It might be useful to table the 1336 discussion to see how big a field of study we end up with. Because if it is too small, it might make sense to add it anyway, just to, so that we don't get X minus 10 transferring as
Right,
X.
but it looked like if we put it in, there's issue for some schools that they may not have enough electives to absorb it versus the schools that require it. Is that going to create problems for them?
Yes, that's the other being counted. You have to count.
I can go either way in our curriculum. So, okay, so then The next most popular ones were the calculus, where I think probably everyone who's saying they want calculus 1 said calculus 2 as well, probably, right? That was in the prior field of study as well. I think
Yes.
certainly every computer science that's driven by engineering requirements requires both calculuses.
Well, I think ABET requires
Right.
calculus, period, so I don't see how that could be ever dropped.
Right. So is putting it in an issue for any school? I think, and it's taught to, if you look at that table, it's taught to a zillion students in Texas in community colleges, right? I know we have a whole lot of students that take it at Blinn already, so. So we could just assume those are in the F field of study? Go on, then now this is the one that's the interesting one, I think, discrete math. I mean, I was on a lot of communication last night with our faculty who spend all their time thinking about undergrad curriculum. They were totally adamant, and can we also change and also can we make it a co-requisite for the programming 3 course at the same time is what they're emphasizing, but that, emphasizing from an ABET point of view, we've had issues with that and concerns raised in past reviews, then they would be very nervous about passing ABET without that. But some schools, that's a 200 level course, like a Texas State is 200 level, right? And other schools, it's at a higher level, but then there's only, I think, 8 schools on that giant, junior colleges on that giant table that were teaching discrete math, I think, or something.
It's a higher level in my school, but actually I agree with you, not just for an ABET perspective, but just by seeing the students, how they learn it in that discrete structures class, and I agree they should be co-requisites.
And so it affected, like, a whole lot of schools were saying we need to have that, but then if it's not offered in many community colleges, and that sort of says no one can complete their field of study.
The community colleges will add it if it is in the field of study, so.
Well, but that's not necessarily up to us. That's whoever's in charge of the math department. And I don't know, speaking personally from our junior college, if it's strictly going to be students that are trying to complete the field of study for computer science, that class is never going to make. So then we're kind of dead in the water anyways.
Right, it's a small number there, I forgot. And the numbers, it was like a couple hundred students in the state taking it, right?
Last year.
We don't offer it as well.
Oh, is it 5? No, wait, that's not the most recent year.
No, it's on farther to the right.
Which was it? It was like, basically it was 280 students in 8 junior colleges. And that last, what is that, FY 2016. So that is,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's-
some schools teach it, and some schools that don't would add it because based on demand, but others aren't going to add it. And so
Yeah, it's
that's, I guess, the
surprisingly
issue.
low. Wow, I'm surprised. 5 colleges offer it with 139 enrollment. That's very low, and 8 universities.
280. Yeah, it's 280 in 2016, FY 2016 enrollment. Go more over to the right-hand side.
Okay.
It's 5 schools with 280 enrollment, the last part of the section of the table. So,
But still, this is a very small number.
yeah, so the question, but like our faculty were adamant, of course, the students have to get it somehow, and their concern, but at least their concern was really tied into the way that the programming 3 course is taught. I mean, how much analysis of algorithms is covered in that course versus, in our case, we have another later analysis of algorithms course, but that was their sort of driving concern for having it.
At the junior colleges, can't they add a computer science version, either discrete structures or something that meet and that they can say is equivalent to the TCCN 2305 if their math department doesn't want to add it?
But that's not in the standard list of, there isn't a discrete structures course in that common set of courses.
Yeah, but I
though.
think all they have to do is match, as long as they align with learning outcomes and the description of the course, the actual number and prefix that they teach at the university doesn't really matter.
Maybe the solution is to add to the ACGM CS a COSC 2305.
Well, there is a math 2305. I don't know if that exists now.
The problem is that in some community colleges, whether the math department teaches it or the computers teaches it, is important.
So
it is
wouldn't
not
it
a
be
trivial
easier
matter.
to just say cross-list the
It
math
can be cross-listed,
2305
but
to
if we have a
CSFS
listing in the
2305?
ACGM of a COSC to discrete math, then they can decide which department teaches it.
But it's still a practical issue. For some schools, it's not going to, the class won't have enough demand to make, right?
But it should, because I mean, if you require every one of your students that takes 1436 to take discrete math, if you have enough students to teach 1436, you certainly have enough to teach discrete math or data structures if you make them correct. So I think, I mean, it can't not make.
Well, it's really it's really 2436 is the one, at least for us, and that enrollment is a few, maybe 500 or something like that, I think.
Yeah, but you see what I'm saying? I mean, if you have enough students for data structures to make, you got to have enough students for discrete make, especially if we make it as co-rec. I mean,
Well, another issue there, though, is that I think we would be running into more than 60 hours because of the 42-hour core that's required, and then once we figure out exactly how many courses we're going to have in the field of study, I know at our school right now, the current number of courses in our field of study, we have room for that in our degree plan, but if we add another course like discrete math, it would bump it over to 60, bump it over 60.
Can I do a timeout right quick? Alan sent me a email, and I wanted to come down, and just a good opportunity to jump in here. And imagine me probably in a black and white striped shirt, like in Monday Night Football last night. It's probably the best way to think of me right now. And just as a reminder, my name is Gary Tomerlin. But first of all, Ginger, to your last reply there's a rule, Administrative Code 9.183, that says if there's a board-approved field of study, students don't have to complete the core curriculum. And so if the number of hours in the FOS exceed the 60, then the students don't complete all of the core, and when they transfer to a university, they complete the rest of the core. And perhaps architecture is the best example of a traditional program to where students in architectural programs, native students at a university, they have to start the architectural studio courses their first semester, or they won't be able to get through all the architectural design stuff by their senior year. And it's normal to find students taking perhaps Comp 1, history, government, whatever, in their junior and senior year to round out the core. And so that rule kind of allows that to make the community college or the transfer students just like native students, if you will. And so the music field of study, the architecture field of study are both examples to where the lower division hours are so great that you can't complete the core and transfer. And so you can come up with a larger number. And then, Scott, to your comment about creating a new course, this committee can make a recommendation to create a new course. We recommend caution on that, and you can do it. Cross-listing sometimes can be problematic because if you're not careful, you just dilute the enrollments. But that certainly is within your purview if that's something you want to take out at the end of the day. And then the last thing that Alan, this is what he sent the email about a couple of minutes ago, and I visited with Rex, the assistant commissioner, before I came down here, and we kind of made a decision a bit on the fly, if you will. I think y'all are the first group that has had a lot of courses that are 3-hour, 4-hour iterations. Prior to this, the only other thing that really comes to my mind is engineering, and there's a standard of practice that has been in effect perhaps since the beginning of time, is that community colleges have taught calculus historically as 3 courses, and the universities have historically taught it as 2 4-hour courses. And we made an exception in engineering that the 3 courses would count for the 2 courses, because it's you got to look at it kind of as the package. And so I give you that as an example that was an accommodation to meet the need of a discipline. But in y'all's case, with the number of courses you're talking that are 3 hours versus 4 hours, I think long-term we need to have a conversation about what is the right number of hours for those courses, and then that solves the problem. But for now, for this FOS, the decision is the course is the course. So if the university has a 3-hour version and the community college has the 4-hour version, when it goes to the university, give them credit for the course. Because if not, if you start taking 3 or 4 computer science courses, then you have 3 or 4 hours that you've got to try to account for. You would, in theory, have to give them a course with unexplored content that you just really can't do that. And so I think, if you visualize the analogy of the bucket, the course is the bucket, and you got to give credit for the bucket. And so I would recommend to you, as much as practical, make recommendations about specific courses, whether it be the 3-hour version or the 4-hour version, whatever's most appropriate for the discipline. And then let's, long term, I think we need to start having serious conversations about when is a course, so that there's only one iteration in the ACGM that will help to level or solve it will do more to help students transfer and apply the maximum number of hours. And so, the technical timeout's over now unless anybody has any.
Well, I have a question about that. So basically, instead of adding a computer science course for like discrete, for example, if we decide it's in the field of study, does that kind of more or less tie the hands of our math departments to have a course for it? Because it's basically, at that point, it's state law. They have to have it. Most math departments will probably work with us, but I'm just saying for those that are difficult.
That's why I said, caution, and I really don't have an answer for you on the fly right now. But, just like we don't bring in the chemist and have them create biology courses, and we don't bring in the biologists and have them create chemistry courses for logical reasons. And every time I do an example, y'all, I go with a content that's not in front of us right now, and just as an FYI, my background is computer science. And so, before I came to the dark side here, I actually taught at a community college, and I've taught computer science. But we would have to try to ferret that conversation out, because, it basically is a math type course. And if we have it in the ACGM already as a math course, then, could we cross-list it? And there are other examples of that. But to me, the big question is, does that really solve the problem?
Well, many of us teach this course as a computer science discrete structures course. We don't call it math because it's not in the math department, but it's the same material applied to the CS domain. So
That's certainly how we do it. We teach it in the computer science
that's the way we
department.
taught it. That's the way UT does it.
Same.
But and back to my bucket analogy, and not making a decision for y'all, but like I said, it's the bucket. It's the information that should drive the vehicle. If it's extremely problematic that it has a math rubric instead of the COSC rubric, then then that can be a conversation, yes. But I think we just have to try to figure it out. And I guess there was conversation about diluting the enrollments, and not only diluting the enrollments from a community college point of view, but from our point of view here at the coordinating board is it clear to students? Is it in the best interest of students? And with that content already existing in math, how does that apply into the math discipline, if you will, and versus the computer science discipline? And like I said, it's a conversation, and y'all can make it as a recommendation. You can discuss it. You can try to ferret out your best answer, and then we'll take that back and try to figure out how to resolve it.
Right, I think the cross-listing issue was only if the math department was going to be ornery. Okay, but I know we also allow the discrete math from the math department to substitute, so I'm fine with that. It's mainly that we have to have them have it, and we currently teach it as a 200 level course, and so if it's not in the FOS and the student comes in FOS complete, we have a serious problem. Okay, we can't pass accreditation. So that's our challenge is really driven by that rule about if they're FOS complete, we can't require any other lower division courses.
And you know, as you say that, I mean, every discipline that we have come in here, and I talked yesterday about this was a challenging task, and I sincerely meant that. I think every discipline fairly easily agrees on the content and what students need to know, what they need to be able to do, what they should be able to demonstrate, and all that kind of stuff. The challenge is the courses that we've created, and they're part of our history, if you will. And we can't do this, I know this, but if we could almost come in here and throw the courses away and start over and create the new buckets and then name them appropriately, I think it'd be a different conversation. But, you know, we've got to figure out how to massage it together, and then hopefully as these groups meet in the future, we can find greater alignment, greater commonality, and work to move forward. But anyway, and you know, your comment about honorary faculty, I'm not going to touch that because this meeting is being webcast. But yeah, I've heard similar comments before. And anyway, so I'm gonna go back to go ahead.
I would like to go to your first comment that you made. If the FOS has too many credit hours, then community college students, they don't have to take the complete core.
At the community college.
At the community college. Does this one create a problem? Because then major courses from the degree plan will be taught at the community college, and at the university level, we're going to be teaching the core. It's a balancing act.
No, it's really, that rule is in effect really more for the natural type of things that exist anyway. Engineering, music, architecture, those are in, and you should be able to go look at your own universities and look at the curriculum online to where you have to get immersed in the discipline up front your first semester, or you're literally behind. And as an example, as an engineering transfer student, and y'all know this better than I do, if you haven't taken some of the core, either mechanical or circuits or whatever courses, and you've completed 60 semester credit hours at a community college that's core, and let's go outside the core because you have to have university physics 1 and 2, which is part of the core. You have to have at least two calculus courses, if not 3 calculus courses, because they're 4-hour courses. Of the extra 18, that only leaves 10 hours now. And then a lot of engineering programs want chemistry 1, and so you're down to very few hours, and you haven't even taken an engineering course. But if a student completed the core and the courses I just described, and they took 1 other course or 2 other courses, and they transfer, and they, in theory, should have junior standing because they're 60 hours, they're not. They've got to take intro to engineering, generally speaking, at most programs, and that's a standalone course generally. And then once you get through that one, then you get to your next course that is perhaps mechanical or circuits or whatever it is. And then oftentimes there's 2 or 3 semesters before a student literally could get to a junior level load and then start taking or be immersed in the engineering discipline. And so that's why that rule's there. And you know, if you look at the programs online, students are probably, and y'all can probably answer this or share stories,
students are taking either history or English or other core type courses throughout their junior and senior years just because of the nature of you got to get in the discipline first. And so at the end of the day, the 42 hours of core is the 42 hours of core required of all degrees, and then the content stuff is the content stuff.
So you're really talking about what I call the critical path, which could be 7 or even 8 semesters in engineering, computer science, and so you aren't going to reduce your time to graduation unless you reduce your critical path, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, and with us with flat rate tuition, you won't reduce your tuition bill either if you take the wrong set of courses.
Right.
So.
And we hear from parents, and I don't know if Alan talked about this, but part of this Field of Study initiative that's underway currently started really in a Senate Higher Ed Finance Committee hearing before the start of the last session. And well, they started talking about higher ed finance. It quickly evolved more into a conversation about transferability and why are parents continuing to call me and telling me, this is the senators, and I'm paraphrasing what they said, why are parents continuing to call me and telling me that my son or daughter took, X number of hours here and then they transferred there, none of it applied, it's the wrong hours. And, part of that is advising and that kind of stuff. And then part of it is the conversation we're having here. But then part of it is the critical path. Because if you do what I just described, literally the student is on a 6-year path, probably, because if they did 2 at the community college, and then they come and do the first couple of years at a university where they can only take a limited number of hours in the degree program. And there's all kinds of ramifications, residency, housing, financial aid, how many hours can you actually, what's your full-time load, and those kind of things. And that goes back to my comment yesterday about I know this is a challenging task, and I almost, I shouldn't have really mentioned financial aid and those other ramifications that are other buckets of putting degree program together, because we're only talking about the FOS. But it's an important conversation. It's a conversation that is part of our landscape right now, and it's not easy. I get it, but
well, as a parent, my son graduated from a 2-year college 5 years ago, and he's on a 7-year path for his mechanical engineering degree. My pocketbook will be thankful next spring when he graduates, but because of this very issue right here, so 7 years.
I'm going to go back upstairs and let you go back to work if you don't have any more questions of me. I appreciate it, y'all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're talking about Math 2305, discrete math. That some programs have it later, like your program has it later.
So, but when I kind of added up the hours that we already have approved of so far, and we're at 24. And of those, only 8 are computer science. And if we're going to also require the discrete math, we're going to have a field of study for computer science that's mostly not computer science. So I think we need to not only look at what, we also need to make sure that this is a computer science field of study and that it has at least half of the hours should be computer science, I would think.
Right, I was going down the list in
24
terms of the ones that people were seeing most in agreement on.
Yeah.
To whittle away down to the harder questions.
I'm not, I like what you're doing, but as we are going on, we need to keep that as a consideration too. And I
would like
think
to agree
maybe
with you.
in the programming 3, because you need some of the discrete math, but I don't really see why that couldn't be built into the course itself with some modification, and then keep the discrete math at a higher level, be preparing those people for algorithms.
Well, to us, programming 3 is the first data structure and algorithm course, and then we have another analysis of
you do
algorithms
too,
course
actually. Yeah.
later that's the equivalent of our first graduate algorithms course. Our undergrad senior one and our graduate one are the same material.
Okay.
So
Well, yeah.
Discrete math proof methods, there's some fundamental stuff that you need early on. If you wait until senior year to do how to prove things,
But our discrete
Late.
math is a 3,000, it's a junior level course, it's not, and the algorithms we have a data structures and a discrete math at the junior level, and then we have an algorithms at the senior level. But so what
Don't you use discrete math in data structures?
Yes, a little bit.
So
they
is
get-
it a prerequisite?
So is
Say
it,
what? I can't.
I'm sorry, but so you are effectively teaching them a little bit of discrete math in those earlier courses. The way that Programming 3 kind of implies that it's covering a little, in the syllabus, a little discrete math to talk about very basic analysis
And,
there.
and I don't see why you couldn't build in the discrete math that you need in the Programming 3 also. Just enough to fill that need that you have.
I get, this is the way we used to do it, but then the faculty felt that they were not getting enough earlier on, because A&M also has a Math 302, which is discrete math, which we used to have as a required course, but we felt it came too late relative to because we were trying to jam more things in the first 2 years so students could go off on better internships after 2 years' time was the ultimate goal of the whole thing, so.
Well, and I'm not disputing the need for it. I'm just like, we try to fit it all in.
But wouldn't cross-listing it as computer science at least address your objective to there's not enough computer science in the core, in the field of study?
And the field of study, it's a field of study for computer science, and right now, if we include the discrete math, we have more math.
But I'm saying we cross-listed it as computer science, one of the prefixes, computer science as well. So they can take it under that number, the computer science. And
Well, but the discrete math is considered math.
but we teach it
are-
in the computer science department.
Well,
but
at UTD, the math department, the math degree does not require discrete math, while computer science does, so.
No, but
It's
computer science, we are not teaching the I used to teach discrete math. I'm a computer scientist, but I also have a math degree. But because of the SACS requirements, if it's a math prefix, it's math faculty that has to teach it.
That's why we call ours discrete structures. I think,
Okay.
is it UT, isn't there, is it also discrete structures as well as the title?
It may be. I think it's called Discrete Math for Computer Science. We
okay.
teach it in it's a first-year class. It's very important to our curriculum.
Yeah, but our program is, if in a smaller program, it is really difficult to have, the discrete math for computer science and a discrete math for mathematics. I mean,
So how is Corpus Christi teach?
We have a discrete math.
But are you still a math CS department, or did you?
No, we've split for quite a while, yeah.
Okay, so it's taught by math, or?
It was actually taught by a faculty that he was my line, but he was a mathematician, so he taught for the math department.
Okay,
now-
but officially it's a math
Yes.
class,
Yes.
even though, well, the material might be kind of similar. I mean, we're teaching the same material, just applied to CS problems,
But
right?
just to the point about this, not as much computer science in this field of study, I suspect that if you look at your current curriculum, that you're requiring a lot more non-computer science and computer science right now in the first 2 years. So I don't, that's okay for us. I mean, this is what we're doing. We're trying to set the lower division courses that our students are going to take. And right now, that's kind of the reality, is they don't take very many computer science courses in their first 2 years.
but if you then, but you have to, so also, how big does the core have to, the field of study have to be? I mean, how many hours are we talking about?
We saw a huge range yesterday in the examples Alan presented from, like, was it 12 hours or something? Political science was a pretty small one to,
One was 24.
the old one here was up to 32 hours if you had the 4-credit versions of all the classes, right?
Well, we're if we add the discrete math and we go down the list we already have, we are 27.
Well, that's why Simeon was suggesting, let's sort of go through all of them and see what it looks like as a first pass, that,
I know one thing to kind of consider too from a 2-year standpoint is, I can't remember the exact goals of the state on how fast they want this to be in place for the field of study, but if we're having to create courses, our administration moves slower than snail's pace. So, it usually takes a year, 2 years to get stuff passed. So I don't know how that's gonna, I can't remember the exact goals of the state on how fast they wanted this done in 2019, 2022. But that may become an issue further on down the line as well.
Right, but I think this is the only course where that's really an issue, right?
And also remember that there is overlap between the field of study that we have discussed so far and the core curriculum, because the math and the physics are also in the core curriculum, or can be in the core curriculum.
Right, and those have high enrollments across the state, is every place. I don't think it'd be an issue, and that's where everyone seemed to want very close to the same thing, right?
Is it required that the two-year colleges teach all of the courses in the field of study core? Is that required? So if it took you longer to put a discrete in, it wouldn't affect you? I mean, it wouldn't hurt you?
Right. But then for those of us that don't have it, it would just mean that we would have less community colleges that would have field of study complete students. Which, I mean, yeah, that's true.
But eventually you would. If it's
Yeah, eventually we would, yes.
Yeah.
Right, but like we said, the real data shows that I quizzed our undergrad advisors, have they ever met a field of study complete student? And basically the answer was no. So, but there's all sort of students that are transferring in that have some of it, right? So in that sense, it's not clear it really makes a real change in the short term anyway. If they're coming in with all but, with most of it, they would say, oh, can you make a co-requisite to, then this is a bigger issue, right?
I mean, we're talking, year and a half, 2 years. At our institution, it is 2 years. And that's if it doesn't get shot down somewhere along the line by some part of an ACT group or administration. I mean, it may take us more than 2 years. And in that instance, we're not able to do this.
Right, but from the student's viewpoint, it effectively, with the current set of courses, it's like one course. That's one course they couldn't take in a community college, they would have to take in the four-year school and they're transferring.
But then they wouldn't transfer, if it's in the field of study, they wouldn't transfer complete. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Right, but then.
But would that matter? It doesn't matter to the student.
Well, I think what may cause a problem too, though, is if our field of study becomes larger than the Common Core, then we have students that are transferring that aren't Common Core complete and aren't field of study complete. So both blocks are kind of shot down. Am I correct in that?
They got to go one way or the other. They're either going to have to do field of study or they're going to have to do computer science the way that we offer it now. Because,
But, I mean, we obviously take from Tarrant County, and I have lots of students that transfer in and aren't core complete, and it doesn't bother them, so they need an extra history class or whatever.
but the ones that are transferring, either core complete or that want to utilize this, I know it's not being utilized now. I've said that. But if we are going to utilize it, then you're asking us to add a course that doesn't exist right now, okay? And I'm telling you, it's going to take us at least 2 years if it doesn't get shot down. So if you put it in there, there's a possibility we will not be able to use this. So then, in other words, you will still continue to get those transfer students, okay, that are not core complete, or you will get core complete students that took an AS degree with computer science as electives from us.
But on
Okay.
the other hand, if we don't put.
And that doesn't bother, I understand that doesn't bother you, but if the reason that we are trying to implement this field of study is that we want to utilize it, I'm telling you, we have to get the course added. And if we don't, then we're not going to be able to utilize it. That's all.
Okay, well, I don't see how I can put discrete at the 3,000 level.
Okay, let's move on to the next most popular one on the list here was the computer organization course. That it's like about half the votes were on that, on their dream FOS here.
And there were also 3 votes on the 4-credit version.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that was probably. I'm looking here at our we teach it as a 4-credit version. That's back to this issue Gary raised about 3 versus 4 credits. We're at 4 credits. Some schools are at 3 credits. The issue is because it's the lab issue.
The main issue with 1436, 1336 is that most of us consider it a deficiency class. So
No,
the
we're
number of
talking
hours-
23, I'm talking 23, 25 versus 24, 25. The computer organization course. That we have a lab, so ours is 4 credits. And we're using the same book as UT is using for the Randy Bryant and O'Halloran's book, but who was the 3 credits? Your 3 credits?
3.
Another complication for us is that for us, this is a upper division class, so I guess they can't transfer in as a lower division class from another school. Is that right? Is that the rule?
We talked about it yesterday. That would have to be
An exception.
exception because there's a separate rule that says you can't make the students take the same, substantially the same material twice.
It is an upper level class in UTD as well.
Yeah, so you can count the course as being satisfied, but you can't count the credits towards the upper division rules, the 45 hours upper division.
I think the real issue is the 3 versus 4 credits here. The majority were at 3 credits, and I think part of that is the teaching of it is the 23, 25 is more common than the 24, 25, I think, in terms of the teaching of it in the community colleges. But so how many? It's like a lab-based course or a lecture-focused course for you?
For us, it's lecture-based. We have an additional lab course that's 1 hour. So
it's 2 separate.
Yeah, we separate
courses.
it out.
Okay.
So for us, it's a lecture and lab combined,
Yeah,
4
same
hours
for
of
us.
credit.
Yeah, same for us. What about? You said yours is 3.
Yes, it's 3. It's just a lecture-based
Course.
3 hours at UTD as well.
Yeah, ours is, we're also 3 hours lecture only.
So the issue is if it's a 3-hour course in the FOS and transfers, you miss out we'd lose out on the knowledge from the lab versus if it's a 4-hour course, then you have that extra credit to squirrel away somewhere else. Although in the case of, for Arlington, there is that block of 4 that's possible to do that.
Well, I gather from what Gary was saying that we need to think in terms of the course and not the credit hour, since there's some ambiguity about that. So I retract what I said before, if I'm understanding Gary correctly, that if a student takes the 4-hour version and they transfer to an institution that only offers a 3-hour version, you would not have to find room in your 120-hour degree plan for that one stray semester credit hour. Because if you think about it, if a student did that 3 times, which they could very easily here, if they took the computer class, the physics class, the programming fundamentals, and they took that all at the 3-hour, 4-hour versions, and you only offered them at the 3-hour version, they'd come in with 3 semester credit hours, and you'd have to give them 3 semester credit hours of credit for nothing. A 0 content 3-hour course. And we can't do that. So I think in that case, the student would just have taken, unfortunately, an extra 1-hour course that just got lost. So you wouldn't have to find room in your 120 hours for that extra 1-hour course. If you put the 4-hour course in the field of study and then a university only offers it at the 3. Does that make sense?
Well, actually, the 4-credit version is taught a lot more than the 3-credit version across the state here. If you look at, oh, wait, where am I? I'm looking at it reversed.
Yeah, I moved the 2016 data to the front of the screen there.
Oh,
So it looks like 9 universities offered at the 3-hour version, right? And 3 universities offered at the 4.
we're on the,
Colleges, it's not too different. 16 colleges offer the 3-hour version, and 11 colleges offer the 4-hour version.
only 3, okay, so only 3 schools are currently offering it at 4 hours? But, you know, the issue for us would be, if they only, if it's in the FOS and they took only the 3-hour version, then they come in missing a bunch of knowledge that is going to create a problem passing their next classes the way our sequences, they're getting that prior to their systems course, where the assumption is that they can fiddle around it in the operating system at assembly code if they have to and stuff, so.
But in that case, you can probably add a 1-hour lab that said that 23, 25 would transfer into your version of 24, 23, 25 plus this 1-hour lab would be the equivalent of your 4-credit class. You could do that.
And I'm not sure how, we would, you're saying create a 1-hour lab, or
If you were concerned that they didn't have enough, if they were missing some core knowledge, you could just put that core knowledge in a 1-hour class.
Right, now for us, we have that option because we teach it as a 300 level class. And so if we'd somehow have to create another 1-hour lab, or just have the students take the lab for the existing course or something like that, I'm not sure how, I guess the simplest would be to create a 1-hour lab course to deal with those students. Although, back to the point of administrative inertia, I'm confident that no one would create such a course until the student showed up that had this issue, right? And then it takes all the time. That it would have to go to a coordinating board for approval, right, of a new course, right? So, unless we could reuse that, because there's already 1 credit at Arlington to use that's been approved it's already been approved as a course,
Right,
right?
but if it, yeah.
So,
I mean, we have a problem. It's not exactly a lab for that, but it is a lab that follows that, and or can be taken at the same time. If we bring it in I guess what we're saying is that our lab would have to move to the 3,000 level. It wouldn't be able to stay at the 2,000 level if it's brought in that way, which is another set of problems. I don't know what I'm going to do with these extra hours.
but certainly, but anyway, this is, Bruce, that's a 300 level class for you as well?
It's a junior level class, that's right.
So in that sense, we have less of an issue. But there is that separate rule, you can't require students to take the same material that was in a transfer course, but then you can argue about what's the same, I guess, right?
Well, I think I don't actually think that our conversation here is well informed about what the content of these courses really is. We're all operating off of titles and using our knowledge of our own programs to fill in all the blanks about what this title really means. But it's been my experience that that's exactly where the problem lies. The transferred courses from other schools may have the same titles as the ones we teach at UT Austin, but they don't match in substance. And we do a disservice to students by giving them the false illusion that these classes are equivalent, and they're not. We're just setting them up for trouble down the road.
I couldn't agree more.
The challenge is, how do we deal with the fact that some of the schools are teaching this at a 200 level course, and so if it's not in the FOS, they can't require it then, unless they just move it to be a 300 level course in their curriculum.
It's just more evidence that the courses are not really the same. We're all teaching different versions of computer organization. Some at the freshman level, some sophomore, some junior.
We teach it as a 3,000 level.
Same at UTD, and that's the problem that.
So it's only Texas State teaching 200 level for computer organization?
We are.
Oh, okay.
It's a 2,000 for us too.
Oh, okay, so 3 schools at 2. But these are all lecture. These are lecture courses. Well, you have a separate lab too, right?
Ours is just lecture. It's 3 hours.
Right. Let's see. I think in terms of like what we have gone through, the laters were the less popular versions that we sort of have talked about. I think that one person wanted linear algebra. Is that taught at a 200 level?
At UDD is a 2,000 level class, yes.
Okay. Ours is everyone else 300 level, 3,000 level?
Yes, it's a
For which?
Linear algebra.
Yeah, it's 3,000.
Okay, UDD is an outlier on that one then, but that's fine.
So we kind of have gone through all of there's one part, intro to computing, a few other things, but we sort of gone through all the ones where there was a lot of people listing, which is all the things that were on the old 2003 field of study that, remember from what Gary said, the old one, there was like a 3 or 4 version of practically everything except physics, which he suggests is a bad idea. But the trend has been in the schools to mostly teach, I think, or the transfer cases are mostly one or the other. So it sounded like where there was the most discussion was about whether 1436 should be in or out. And if it's in, for schools like us, since it's not in the curriculum, it would have to go off to be some random elective. And the discrete math, that it's, a lot of schools wanted that in, but it's not taught at very many community colleges. And then the issue of the 3 versus 4 credit version of the computer organization. And as Bruce pointed out, of course, for many of these courses, what is actually covered varies, and how, kind of like thoroughly the learning objectives of each of the courses are achieved.
Can we summarize what do we have agreement on, pretty much general agreement on that's been in the FOS now? Because the size of it is going to end up being important.
There seemed to be agreement from everyone on the physics and the calculus. That's 16 credits right there.
You're referring to Calculus 1 or Calculus 2 as well?
Yeah, Calculus 2. So 2413, 2414, and then Physics 2425 and 2426.
Is there general agreement on programming the 1337, 2336?
Well, it was 1437 we were talking about.
40, yes.
Yeah. Because I think most schools were teaching that. We in UT were kind of selectively taking that in the past. I think Bruce said like half, roughly, you think, were passing through the Programming 2 course, 1437.
Yeah, that's right. We get it, in the past, I've looked at 3 years, we got on average 10 requests a year to transfer in that course. We reviewed the materials the student provided, the projects that she did, the assignments, the book they used, and so forth. And we awarded transfer credit in half the cases.
But the class at UT is data structures. It is not, it's 313, right? It is not programming 3.
No, we're talking Programming 2 here right now.
In our curriculum, it's called Programming 2, Data Structures.
Okay. So the UT, the class you're talking about is the 2436, though, right?
No, right now we're talking about this 1437, the Programming 2 course.
1437, I think there's general agreement. There's no issue.
And that was the one where I thought you had said.
I need to correct what I said then. I was referring to the wrong class. With respect to 1437, we routinely, without exception, take that as transfer credit into our first programming class.
So there is no controversy about 1437.
Okay.
It
No.
starts at 2330.
Yeah, we give them a test anyway,
Sorry
but
about
they
that.
mostly transfer it. So 1437, then the issue was, okay, what about 1436? Some schools have that in their curriculum. Some schools don't have it in their curriculum. if you leave but it's a prereq to 1436 that the community colleges enforce. If you leave it out of the field of study, does that cause the student to have to take, it sounded like they don't have to take too many credit hours because it just cuts a core course at the community college versus?
The same issue as pre-calculus and algebra trig.
You know, in terms of
consistent. I mean,
but the issue is, so if the student comes in, in the sense, if it's not in the field of study, they still have to take it.
well, the
And then it
same
would
way they
just
have to take pre-calculus and so on, and they're
no,
not.
but
in
the difference is they could transfer that credit in as just a regular course transferring in, even if it's not in the field of study. So take University of Houston, it's required in your degree, but even if it's not in the field of study, they also took it in a community college, you could just transfer those credits in anyway as a separate batch of 3 credits you're transferring in addition to the field of study credits, right? Because since if it isn't in the field of study, it's not applying to the degree, I think, right? I think if we leave it out, but then leaving it out depends on, then that's putting the onus on the community colleges to enforce the prereqs, right? That they gotta take it,
We do that already.
right?
Yeah, I don't see that being a problem.
So we just leave 1436 out of the field of study?
That's what I would recommend, yes.
would be to take the courses one at a time that we're nominating. To include it,
Okay,
to discuss, because
But
all right.
we need to get a good, clear.
Okay,
may-
so let's, so Alan suggests that we kind of take formal votes on the ones we've agreed to so far, and then we can kind of go to
Right.
sort of hammer things down. So, if who's our secretary? I forgot.
Andrew.
Okay, so, if I could have a motion for approval of including Physics 24, 25 in the field of study. Second? Okay,
The 4.
4.
4. All in favor of Physics 24, 25 in the field of study? You need to count votes?
Be sure to, does this work? Oh, it works. Be sure to state the vote count out loud for the people seeing on the web.
Okay, so we need the hands up. And then we got 3 more. 7, 8, 9, 16 yes and no? Abstain? Okay, so 1 abstain. Okay. You can vote, even if you're a last-minute sub. Okay.
Yeah, he's subbing for Castaneda, and
Right.
he's not a board-approved member yet. But we'll see if
Okay,
it
I see what
does.
you're saying, okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so motion passes. Okay, so now for Physics 24, 26, is there a motion to include it in the field
Move
of
to
study?
include Physics 24, 26.
In a second?
Second.
So all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. We have,
What's yours?
okay, so how many was that? Okay, so one less. One less. So all opposed with 24, 26 in the field of study? So 1 opposed.
If I may, to just explain our standpoint. So we are coming from, the computer science program was created by the physics department, which is now the engineering department, engineering and computer science. So we're still teaching digital circuits. It's required for computer science. And I know it's being de-emphasized, but that's how it is now. We're trying to move away from that, so strategically, we said, okay, well, if digital circuits used to require Physics 2. It was in engineering, you'd have to take Physics 2, then analog circuits, then digital circuits. We're trying to kind of move away from that, and this is why we decided we're not going to even require Physics 2 in computer science, except we have one concentration that's called computer engineering. So that's where I come from.
But if they came in with Physics 2, they could
That
still
would-
use it in the curriculum.
That would be part of the Gen Ed core. Yeah.
So in that sense, they could still use
Yes,
it, right? Okay, all right.
I can, but, as a matter of principle, I wanted to explain why.
Okay, now, do I have a motion to approve Math 2413 for inclusion in the field of study?
24.
The Calculus 1?
I'll make motion.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, that is unanimous. Could I have a motion to approve Math 2414 in the field of study?
Second.
All in favor? That is also unanimous. Okay, do I have a motion to approve COSC 1437, Programming 2
I'll
in
make a
the
motion.
field of study?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, that's also unanimous. Okay. All right, so those are all the ones we could easily get agreement on. So then the discussion was about 1436. It seemed like if we left it out, it would still come in as like a separate course in, from a transfer point of view for the universities that require it. That we're Houston, Tarleton. I thought somebody else requires 1436 as well.
We do.
No? Okay, so 3 schools. It would still come in. It could still transfer in as a separate non-FOS course, right?
Yeah, although if we decide to leave it out, I think we have to suggest that we change the ACGM to put something or equivalent for the prereqs, because otherwise we get in the problem of a hidden prereq. Because I was looking at what the math did, and that's what they did for something like calculus. They say or equivalent.
Okay, so Alan, can the old 2003 FOS had a bunch of footnotes in it, some of which were to let some schools out of the requirements?
Yeah, we can't do that anymore.
I understand
Yeah,
that,
that
but
was
can we
an
put
error
these
that
sort
should
of,
have never been made
these are
back
what we would call clarifying footnotes in it about, like, this is the implication that if you require 1437, you're requiring 1436 because it's a prereq to 1437? Or,
Is that,
The calculus handled. In the,
is that the way it's stated in the ACGM description? Is it a prerequisite in the ACGM?
Yes.
in the ACGM, 1436 is a prereq to 1437, yes.
Well, I don't think if it's that way in the ACGM, I don't think it's necessary to add a footnote
Okay,
repeating that information in the field of
All right.
study document.
okay.
Yeah, but what I'm suggesting is that in the ACGM, we put or equivalent for that. Otherwise, it becomes a hidden prereq, and then people are going to complain about that.
why is it a hidden prereq? Is pre-calculus a hidden prereq for calculus?
No, because it says or equivalent. You can show that you have the knowledge. Right now, we're saying, no, you must take it. And so if you don't have the ability for somebody to get out of it, it becomes a hidden prereq.
But then the issue would be, what would you do for a student that came in with 1437 but not 1436? So they get so they're complete with their lower division, but they're 3 credits short.
Yeah, well, I mean, if somebody came in FOS complete and they didn't have this programming 1, I wouldn't care because they had all the other knowledge,
Right.
and assuming they've passed all the other courses with good grades, we'd let them in.
So that you would just assume they'd make up those 3 credits somewhere else then?
Well, no, we would probably change our degree program to, because I think down the road, this is something that should happen because we do know that more and more people are taking computer science. There's a big push to put computer science in high school curriculums to make it more standardized. And once that happens, we're going to have to make this change. So I don't have a problem with that. So
So then you would say it's like, it's okay if you don't have it, but if you needed to take it, you can.
Yeah, well, we would,
Okay.
like I said, we put in the procedures in place that, the way of how you show that you don't need it, whether it's an exam or test scores or something.
But at least right now, they would, if they just come in and they have it, it would just transfer in to directly meet the existing requirement you have though, right? You know, if they took 1436, it's not in the FOS, but you could just transfer it in and directly map it to
To that course,
your
yeah.
course now. So there isn't any funkiness with how the courses match up. Because your course has a common course number now? Your 1430, your programming one course has a common course number, so it just automatically?
Well, we're actually 1435, so, but
Okay.
we're the equivalent of 1436,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so then that sounds like leave out 1436.
Yeah, but with the caveat that we suggest that the ACGM be changed, because otherwise I think that's a problem.
Okay,
I have a question. What happens with the traditional students? We're talking now about transfer students. How do we accommodate the traditional students who come from high school and most probably they don't have 1436?
well, but you can require them to take it right now. That doesn't change going forward, right?
You treat it the same way as pre-calculus and so on for calculus.
Yeah, you could choose to modify your curriculum to say that students can, and our faculty discussed this too, rather than saying, we'll test them and then say, oh, you have to do that. In fact, that's essentially what we did is it's not in our curriculum, but effectively it is, and they just can place out of it. In the sense if they don't know that knowledge, they have to take one of our non-major courses. But if they do, but by default, they don't. Well, right now, you're requiring them to take it. You could change to say, okay, you can place out of that course if you already know the material, right?
I guess that's one way to.
I mean, that's the
approach
trend.
it.
I think over the last couple decades, that's the way our department progressed from that was the students came in knowing nothing practically, and then they knew more and more. So we changed that beginning curriculum to assume they had that, and then we just had it as supplemental for the students who didn't know it. I don't know what UT is. You're assuming they already come in knowing that material already anyway, right?
That's right. We assume they know it. If they don't know it, they have to take a remedial class that does not give them credit toward their major. Same as
That's how we do it.
trigonometry.
Yes.
Right, so I think that would satisfy everyone's need if we leave it off, but it's a prereq knowledge for 1437 and depend on all the colleges to just enforce that requirement, right? Well, effectively, they won't pass the 1437 if they don't know it anyway, right? So
Could we make a recommendation, a formal voted-on recommendation from this committee that the ACGM be modified so that 1436 is not listed, or the prerequisite is changed to have 1436 or equivalent as a prerequisite for 1437?
What does that give you? What is the or equivalent? The testing or?
It allows us to comply with the ACGM when we do that, when we test them out.
is that,
Do you do that with pre-calculus?
It's listed in the math ACGM. It's listed in the calculus course that pre-calc or equivalent preparation is a prerequisite.
Fine, that's
okay, so
system then.
I guess for courses we're leaving out, do we have to have any sort of vote about that, or it's an official decision essentially, yes?
Yes, why not?
Well, somebody can make a motion that we vote on it, and then
Okay.
it can either be voted down, or nobody makes a motion and
I
it's not
move
included.
that computer science 1436 is not in the field of study.
Okay, and in terms of discussion, I suggest we amend that to say that we move to leave 1436 out and recommend that the description of 1437 be modified to list the prereq as 1436 and equivalent?
Or equivalent.
Or equivalent?
Yes. Modification accepted.
All in favor?
Wait, hold
What?
on. Ginger, can you get that exact language that we're going to recommend to ACGM?
Thank you. I was actually going to ask for that for
The motion is
clarification.
that the COSC 1436 class is not in the field of study, and the COSC 1437 class is modified to where the prerequisite is COSC 1436 or equivalent.
Equivalent preparation.
Equivalent preparation.
Okay, all in favor?
Wait, Steve, is that the language that is that the same comment you had?
It works?
Okay, all in favor? That's all but one? All opposed? Okay, we can still discuss. You want?
No problem. I mean, my 106 students don't carry much weight, so I'm not worrying too much.
But you can still work with that in the sense they come in knowing 1436 knowledge one way or another.
We have to make sure that they know their pointers and pointers to functions and this type of stuff. But, I mean, yeah, we'll probably give some informal testing in there, put some pointers in 1437, this type of stuff.
Well, yeah, we call that advising, which can include tests so that we give the students information to make good decisions, right? So, okay, so if you look at the old FOS, the two remaining issues, well, the issues were really that discrete math and the computer organization. That the COSC 2425 is not taught very often in community colleges now. It's, I think, was it 3 schools only now offer it? One's probably Blinn, right? Maybe.
We do offer it, just never filled.
Oh, okay. So
We do offer us one.
Which one are we talking about?
We offered as well.
the 4-credit version of computer organization 2425 is rarely offered statewide now in community colleges.
We offer it, just doesn't make.
Right. And,
Yeah.
well, that's what I mean in terms of the number of, the chart listed 3 schools or something like that. I think it's whoever's teaching it really. And then, but the 2325 3-credit version is taught. So I assume that's a lecture-only probably version of the course, not a lab-based course. At least for, I think for us in UT, because we teach it at a 300 level, we can finesse that in terms of, if we really wanted to, we could effectively create a course for students that had 23, 25, but not all the knowledge of 24, 25. I think mostly the lab material is what's missing.
I think this is a very good example of a course where we really do not have a consensus or even any insight at all, admit it, right, on what this course really is at each of our other schools. So we're discussing this in almost a complete vacuum of important content. All we really are going on here is the title of the course. So the only way I know, if this becomes part of the field of study, the only way I know of protecting our external transfer students from making a big mistake is to have some kind of a test, some kind of a way of assessing their understanding of this material before they go on to the next one. It's a 2-course sequence at UT. The next semester, they'll die.
And I don't object to that with one caveat, I mean, leaving it out. But what it would mean for me is I have to move computer organization to the 3,000 level, right?
Yes. And that issue also applies to Texas State
And us.
To Corpus Christi. Anyone else?
So
UT Dallas has the same issue as UT Austin. It is not exactly the same class.
But it's a
computer
3
architecture 3,000 level.
But you're already teaching 3,000 level, right?
3,000 that is close, but it's not the same class.
Right. But if we left it out, it's the schools that are at a 200 2,000 level that's the concern, right? Because effectively, they'd have to move it to 3,000 level to deal with FOS complete students if we leave it out of the FOS, correct?
To be consistent, yes, yes.
Yeah, and we also have like a follow-up architecture class, which is right now at a 3,000 level. Would probably have to move that to 4,000. But you know that's something that we can address. I don't have a big issue with that.
So if we leave that out, like I said, we've never had. I'm not sure we've ever had a student come in that was trying to transfer in credit for this class into our major ever. Maybe, at least I couldn't find any faculty who knew of such a case for us, so.
I have just a small comment. I think we mentioned this yesterday, that many new institutions are begun through the cybersecurity environment, CA2Y for the 2 years, CAE for the 4 years. I just recently served for a committee that they're developing cybersecurity curriculum as a whole. Some percentage, like adequate percentage of material comes from the computer architecture perspective. I know you mentioned yesterday that the assembly is no longer, or the whole curve to teach assembly, that will take a while, but there's a considerable amount of concepts, at least very briefly about the concepts of assembly, kernels, a lot of stuff. So I know that this committee can probably suggest something in the future, but as the content of CSEC, for cybersecurity, which happens to be that community college, they have that course. We do offer those concepts, very similar to the 4-year institution. I echo what you said about there's some strict words that we need to put in place just to make sure the objectives they're aligned in order to make the students survival for the next year. That's critical. But I think the effort starts in the institutions just to make sure they have some MOU in place, just to make sure that is suggested. That course will have some weight in the next years, at least for the cybersecurity component or perspective. That's my only point of view regarding this class to be taught in the 2-year colleges, specifically because of this new venue of cybersecurity. I agree. In El Paso Community College, we do offer that class. Often, it's not very well received in the 4-year institutions. Our MOU that we have a nice conversation, healthy conversation for the 4-year institutions. But as I said, the recent conversation.
23, 25, or 24, 25? Okay.
25, yeah. That's the only footnote that I would like to just stare there about that.
Well, I would agree that if there's an increase in cybersecurity interest for community colleges, that courses like we teach a reverse engineering course as part of our NSA certification, and so obviously that's deep into assembly code level of knowledge that all of our students we do send a fair number of students to the NSA, which is why we know there's no secrets. So that. But the issue here really is practically from putting it in the FOS, because so few schools are teaching it at a 4 credit level, and then some are at 3 and some are at 4, versus mostly it's at the 3,000 level anyway in our curricula. So it's sort of outside of the FOS for most of the schools.
So may I ask if this is a degree in cybersecurity, or is it a degree in computer science aimed at cybersecurity? Because if it's a degree in cybersecurity, we're really not having a problem here.
Right. No, it's not necessarily in cybersecurity. The whole idea here is to align objectives rather than just courses. That's the thing. In some courses, they can sprinkle across the entire FOS of computer science.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we add COSC 2325 to the FOS.
And I second that.
Discussion?
When I looked at the documents that we were given on the 23-25, on our schedule, it says computer organization and machine language. But on the actual document, it just says computer organization. So we want to make sure that the title matches.
The old FOS says computer organization and machine language. The
ACGM just shows.
yeah, it just says computer organization in the ACGM.
But the description,
But it says the organization of computer systems is introduced using assembly language, right? But like Bruce said, that's, I mean, I've taught our version of this course, so I know exactly what's in it. But in terms of like what is covered, has anyone here taught the 23, 25, 24, 25 here?
Yeah, a long time ago. Like a long time ago.
Okay, because the like I said, the challenge is if it's in the FOS. So when for a school like ours, when it would transfer in, okay, it doesn't, because ours is a 3,000 level. It's not directly applying to that, but we can't we shouldn't, if there's a substantial overlap, we can't directly just require the student to take the 3,000 level course again according to the law. But we could require them to take some other course that makes up for the deficiency. That generates a ABET headache.
Right. Well, I just noticed the discrepancy in the title. That's all. I'm not
Okay.
talking about the content. I have no issues with the content.
So may I ask before we vote, we have this course at the 3,000 level. So what exactly is the law reference for this that we cannot make them take similar material?
Yeah, in those sort of legal documents that you got distributed, I spent a lot of time reading them last night. There is let me see. Let's see. Yeah, so following receipt of credit for these courses, the student may be required to satisfy the remaining course requirements in the field of study curriculum of the receiving institution. That's like if you weren't FOS complete, or to complete additional requirements in the receiving institution's program, that is the 3,000 and above, as long as those requirements do not duplicate course content already completed through the field of study curriculum. That's paragraph C in that Texas Administrative Code Title 19, blah, 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 blah. So what does duplicate mean is fuzzy, right? So that you could, we, like internally, we typically will say if the course is a 2/3 overlap, you can't take both of them for credit, okay? We're gonna allow you to take one or another. But if it's less overlap than that, we allow the students to do that, especially, I know at the graduate level, I look at hordes of transcripts of students with masters and what do I allow and not allow. I just sort of look at each one individually, but there's always gonna be some overlap and they still do it. Partly because, as Bruce pointed out, the rigor of it will vary from school to school. And in those cases, it's a student who's saying, I want to take this other course because my undergrad networking class was no good, or something like that, they'll tell me. So it seems to me this is a fuzzy area where we could say they have to take the 3,000 level class, even if they transferred in with the 2,000 level class, if we can say it's doesn't cover enough of the material in it. And we could make that argument. I mean, I would make that argument, just if I looked at each student about what's that material, and then I think we have the option to then do the individual, because it's a 3,000 level class, we have the option to do an individual evaluation of each student then to decide whether to give them credit or not, I think.
But for EBET, the documentation you would have to keep and so on would make this really big problem. basically you have to avoid, I think it's better to avoid classes that seem to overlap. Because the default would be for EBET to say you are given double credit for the same content. And you would have all kinds of, you would have to justify it left and right.
If I can say something about ABET, there is a lot of discussion about 2,000 level, 200 level courses. ABET is mostly interested in the upper division courses.
EBET is interested in everything.
I am an ABET PV, and I can tell you, yes, they look at the 200 level courses, but the weight is on the upper level courses.
I agree with you, but we have had examples where we dodged a deficiency because of something we covered in the 200 level courses. So our ABET people I talked to last night do worry about this issue.
And the issue here for the upper will be at the 3,000 level, because the architecture, the classes that some of us have are upper level.
Now,
And they would duplicate content that transfers in at lower level, so.
that I guess the issue is the number of such students I expect is small, right? But the concern though is if it's not in the FOS, then any school that's teaching at so if, you know, my inclination is that you leave it out of the FOS and the few schools just have to renumber their course, that minimizes trouble for everybody else. Versus if it's in the FOS, we're gonna have a lot of headaches and stuff. We'll have a lot of headaches. We'd have to create some other course those students would have to take, and then you gotta explain that to ABET, right?
Well, if you leave it out for the schools that are teaching at the 2,000 level, if you leave it out, then we can no longer accept these transfer students until we fix our program, right? Because then we'll be in non-compliance if we have one major that comes in, doesn't have computer organization, we lose ABET accreditation
Right,
because of that.
so if we put it in or we leave it out, it creates headaches for somebody, right?
Can I ask in terms of ABET, I mean, the solution we would have to do if it moves out is move our computer organization to the 3,000 level. Would ABET be unhappy with that? I mean, we would have.
I cannot speak on behalf of ABET,
Right,
but
I know,
I'm
but-
saying my experience is that most of the information comes typically from a 3,000 or 4,000 level courses.
So with the ACM and CRA guide, where do they recommend that this type of material be covered?
It's usually in the 2,000 level. And actually, this is the first experience I have in Texas, but most in many other states, they still have in the 2,000 level.
So then, just to hammer the ABET point, we have this course cross-listed between computer science and electrical engineering. If ABET is expecting to see upper-level course there, and I agree with what you said, and then all of a sudden we see these students who've taken a 2,000 level course instead, that will stick out like a sore thumb to ABET. We'll have to provide serious proof in that student's file that
Only
they have
course,
the
I guess,
knowledge.
that you offer on computer organization?
We have also a microcontroller course, which is really more assembly language oriented. In this one, we just offer assembly language as a way of explaining architecture.
Well, I look at the prerequisites for this course 2325, and there are two, either 1336 or 1436. And we made a decision earlier not to accept 1436 as part of the FOS. How can we make, I guess, this one a 3,000 level course? That's my question.
Well, the problem is that the way it is taught, it is different than what is in the field of study. The class that is in the field of study, that we are teaching a higher level class.
Just to give you my perspective, we have the digital circuits, which I mentioned before, as a prerequisite for architecture. So.
It might be useful to table this particular discussion to see how big a field of study we end up with, because that might be a factor in another factor to look at.
Okay,
Does not seem to be clear agreement on this.
right, I think the remaining topic was the discrete math.
No, you left out the programming fundamentals 3.
Yeah, we
Oh,
do
you're
we do
right.
have a motion to vote,
36, I
though.
think, is a lot less controversial.
Okay, let's talk about, because that's tied with the,
But remember, we do have a motion to include this, so we can table that motion if everybody votes on that, but otherwise, we do have a motion.
okay. Well, I move that we table, or I call for a motion that we do and move to
I
table
move to
it.
table the discussion of computer organization, machine assembly until later.
Okay, all in favor? Well, you gotta hold your hand up longer here to see who, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it looks like a majority to table it for now. And we can go on and talk about programming 3, 2436 was that well, let's see. So in the voting, there were 9 votes for 2436 and then 6 for 2336. The previous FOS allowed either. But back to Gary's point, that our course is a 4-credit currently. Because of the, how much we're covering, it's 4 credits. Which schools, it's a 3-credit course for the intro course? Yours is 3, okay, ours is 4. The 4-credit one got 9 votes, and the 3-credit one got 3 votes. I think they're 6 votes. I'm sorry, 6 votes.
A justification for the 4 versus 3 would be that
I saw that. Oh, and then there was. Sorry, there's one more
coverage.
vote down at the bottom. So maybe there's 5. Maybe there's 7 votes. Maybe it's 9 to 7. Okay, there's one more down below there. Okay. So it's kind of split in that regard. This is, of course, as Bruce talked about yesterday, is a really critical course in the curriculum. You really have to know the material or you're dead forever.
that is,
I agree, and I think especially for leaving out program fundamentals 1, then I think you can spend that extra hour. I mean, we have 3 hours right now, but I think that can be accommodated into 4. Add a lab.
it is probably the case that the expectations at the 4-year universities are higher than the typical way it is taught at community college. So the extra hour covers, in some sense.
Well, last night when I was talking to our faculty about this, 99% of their discussion was about this course and co-rec with the discrete math. This was by far their top concern of anything we're talking about here, because it affects everything that follows. So I guess we need more discussion. So some it's a 3-credit, but some it's a 4-credit, effectively.
The only thing, UT El Paso, and we mimic basically our MOUs that we have. We dropped the last credit because of the 60 credit hours restriction for transferability, but in our hearts, they still 4 credit hours. I think they still have that rigor that we were speaking, I think takes place in that extra credit
What
hour.
is more commonly taught, the 4 or the 3? Where is that?
I'm looking in the ACGM, and I don't see the 4-credit version. Is it? Because in the handout that we were given anyway, it says 2305.
No.
We're talking about 2336.
I'm so sorry. Okay.
It appears that
The 3-credit is more.
21 colleges offer the 4-hour version, 18 offer the 3-hour version. 1 university offers the 4-hour version, and 7 universities offer the 3-hour version.
It looks like right now on this table, only in FY 2016, only one school is teaching 2436 here, which is, I know Blinn has it, so it must be Blinn. Oh, I'm sorry, that's one university, sorry, it's 12, yeah, so then it's like the enrollment in 2436 is 1,240, the enrollment is, it's 513 in the 2336 with the 18 schools, so it's,
So is there any other four-year university that's teaching the 4-credit version here?
it's just only listed one four-year university
Yeah,
teaching.
well, I mean, that seems us, but that 134 seems wrong, the number of students. It's possible that's correct. So that, I mean, because we teach it as a 4-credit. So that might be, the only university then would be us, which I didn't think we were.
Well, like I said, we don't have common course numbers on any of our courses, so I don't know if anything we're teaching shows up in these tables or not.
This is self-reported data from fiscal year 16, so,
Yeah.
you know, not all data is necessarily reported, and, you know, what you're doing in 2018 may not be the same thing as what was going on in 2016.
But roughly, it's showing that the 2436 is a lot more popular among community colleges
Yes.
than 2336 is.
And I don't see any problem to basically put the 2436 in the FOS, and if the class is mostly 3 credit hours at 4-year universities, comes in as covering that plus 1 hour of free elective.
I would like to ask how many of the universities teach this course at the 300 or 3,000 level as an upper level rather than as a 2,200 level? How many of us do we teach it as a 3,000 or 300 level?
Maybe just as a matter of perspective, this is our gateway course into virtually all the upper level computer science courses. That's why we teach it at the sophomore level.
Well, and this is why it's critical that that knowledge is, you have to know it, or you can't continue, right? That's why this was the top concern of our faculty. But like Bruce said, his experience is like half get transfer credit right now. So that, we can, the practical issue though, the way the law is written though, is if you put it in there and a student has it and you're required to take it as transfer credit, you still have to advise the student you're deficient in some way, but there isn't a clear mechanism where you could, you could advise them to take your own class, but then that sort of is, that gets into this issue about, okay, well, I'm telling them that because it's not really the same as that other class. And so I'm obeying the law because otherwise, if it's really the same, I wouldn't be telling the student that, right?
Bruce, did you notice a difference between 3-credit and 4-credit in those half?
No. I didn't look at that detail, and I don't think that it was a significant one.
Like I said, the old FOS said either 2336 or 2436. Our faculty were saying 2436, but they were mostly thinking about it as, I want it to be as rigorous as possibly can be, and they were just assuming 2436 was.
Just as another monkey wrench in it, if we accept it, I really want discrete to be a prerequisite for it, because I don't see how you can teach data structures without discrete.
But again, we had a little discussion about this. This class is not data structures. It is programming with simple data structures. The emphasis is on programming. At UTD, there is another data structures class that is data structures.
Mm-hmm. So this class...
That comes after this class.
Yeah, this class is learning...
It's practicing your programming using pointers, linked lists, and so on.
Well, yeah, a list of data structures that are listed in the syllabus with a little bit of analysis.
Right. But it is not supposed to be a full-blown data structures class.
Right.
Well, it reads like it. It says Stacks, queues, linked lists, hash tables, trees, graphs, searching, sorting, recursion, algorithm analysis. I mean, it reads like that. I don't know if that's what's done.
Well, yes, you touch on all of those things, but I mean, you say, yes, algorithm analysis it is not an algorithms class.
So for us, it is.
You might talk about how complicated the search is, the binary search is. Fine. That does not make it an algorithms class. You don't talk about NP completeness.
For us, the discrete math class is a co-requisite with the data structure, with programming 3 data structures. And it's a co-requisite because the discrete math class is teaching mathematical proof, analysis, a lot of graph theory, and those are the same theoretical concepts that the students need when they do programming of data structures. And we're wanting there to be a tight coupling between the student study of the theory and their study of the practice of programming. That's why they're co-requisites, so I agree with your point.
Yeah, and that's the same for us as well.
And the 23, the discrete math is a prerequisite to the data structures class at UTD. That makes perfect sense. But again, this is not supposed to be the data structures class.
Well, like I said, about half.
Again, it is programming 3. It is not.
Well, but
it is a part of the programming sequence. It is basically the emphasis is on learning how to program.
Well, but it's like Bruce found, like about half the students, they had that knowledge via this vehicle, right?
Right.
And I think Blinn teaches this course in, I think the way I described, where there's a little analysis, because there's no discrete math requirement. It's just whatever you squeeze in there into the class.
Tell them what we need to tell them.
And then the focus is, here's all these new data structures and here's how you use them, but you're not going into depth on the analysis in that class, right?
An explanation for this would be that the type of student that Austin gets is probably more prepared in order to be admitted, is better prepared than the average student. So that's why he ends up basically saying the program in the 2336 is good enough for about 5 out of 10 students, because the students are top. They are very good students. But if you make it across the state, apply this across the state, the average four-year university does not get the type of student that Austin gets. So we have to view this not as the data structures class, but as a programming class that deals with data structures.
Right.
I
Well,
agree.
in the end, there's like, put it in or take it out, right? And so, we could talk about other things, like we should request it be modified to have discrete math as a co-requisite, which is, we can only just put a request in. So if we left it out, then all of the departments that are teaching it at a 200 level, and the student comes in FOS complete, we can't.
My recommendation is to put it in, because again, most places have it as a low-level class.
Okay, but then if they come in and they don't have all the knowledge that's covered in, like, because we have, because like UT and A&M at least have a discrete math co-rec, and then you're doing a lot more analysis in that course, so the later courses assume the student has that ability, because we don't have another data structure course that comes later. That's it. We cover it all in one class.
Is your course called Programming Fundamentals 3? Is it
No,
the
it's
same?
data structures and algorithms.
So maybe that's just so this could, if we added this in the field of study, if we kept it in the field of study, then it would just transfer in as a different course, like one that's not currently
No,
required.
but our course is 221, so
Oh,
if a
so it
student
is a
comes in
sophomore
FOS
level.
complete, that's a problem.
So the same way that Arlington talked about before, probably your solution would be to move your data structures class to 3,000 level, to the junior level.
Right, but they're taught in the second year, so.
Well,
or some students even the second semester of their freshman year, so.
Yeah, that's the problem, that we have different.
Right. And Bruce, yours is a second year, right? It's a 200 level class, right?
No, that's 3. It's but
Students take these two, discrete math and data structures and analysis, their sophomore year,
Right, yeah, so,
co-requisites.
213 ISS.
okay, so, so we have trouble if it's put in and they don't know enough. Now, we can get away, the discrete math, we can maybe, like I said, our discrete structures is 200, it's 222, but our math department teaches discrete math as 302, so I don't know if it,
I don't see any problem. Yes, discrete structures should be probably taken together with whether we view this as the programming class. Or it has to be done before real data structures. But again, you don't have, you only have one class, so.
Well, it seems like we actually have quite a bit of consensus on this, so I'd like to make a motion that we add COSC 2436 to the FOS and make the recommendation that the ACGM changes the description to include math.
A co-requisite of.
Which math is it? 2305 as a prereq or co-req.
I second that.
Okay.
any discussion on that motion? Okay,
Is it contingent with putting discrete into the FOS also?
that was the motion, yeah.
Oh, well, I thought you just were talking about the prereq.
Yes, just the prereq right now, that's all.
Say that again?
So the motion is that we add COSC 2436 to the FOS and make a recommendation that the ACGM be changed to have math 2305, discrete math, added as a prereq or co-req.
And I would add that it's either math 2305 or a computer science equivalent to that class. So discrete structures, so one or the other.
Well, I think you just have to say math 2305 because if you're using the TCCN for that, it'll cover.
Okay, but then you're into
Add an additional
math departments that may or may not want to teach it.
Well, because there's not currently a computer science equivalent in the ACGM that we
Right.
could reference.
So I
And once
appreciate,
again, the community colleges, most of them will not have the discrete math, so they wouldn't be able to do this FOS.
Well, I actually emailed my department chair, my math department chair, and asked why we don't currently offer it. And he said it's just lack of students, lack of demand for it. I don't think it's required in any other major that we currently have at our school,
Yeah, I don't think community colleges have an issue with offering the course. That's not an
if
issue.
it's needed.
And for Blinn, we actually have planned to schedule it for fall, next
Yeah.
fall.
We don't, it's not in our catalog, but I talked to our Dean of Instructional Services last night, and he actually wasn't even aware that it was an option. And I told him it's kind of like tacked on at the end of the math options, and whenever he looked at it, he just wasn't aware.
I appreciate,
UTPB offers it at a junior level, so it's not something that we ever have looked at.
I appreciate the motion. But I think I would be looking for more than just a catalog requirement that discrete math and data structures be taken at the same time. I'd be looking for some change to the underlying curriculum of those two courses, which reflects that they're going to be tightly integrated so that students are learning the theory in discrete math at the same time that they're applying it in practice in the data structures programming class. It's that tight coupling that makes these two courses so important to the students' four-year program. And I think that's something much deeper. That means that the faculty teaching the courses need to think hard about how they're teaching that subject because they're so tightly intertwined.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think that's a huge ask.
Right,
Exactly. I don't think we have that kind of control. So I'll be voting against this because I just have this data that over the last 3 years we've looked at the transferred courses, and half were up to what we need, and half were not. And it's a disservice to our external transfer students to move them along through a fundamental class in the curriculum without the adequate preparation. That's just wrong.
So what would you do if it's left out of the FOS and a student comes in FOS complete?
I don't know, but I honestly don't know how to work my way through the tangle of legislation that we're facing here. I think we're all sincerely interested in trying to help the students get through a 4-year program in 4 years. But I feel like we've gotten, the legislature has got us so balled up in a set of overlapping and contradictory constraints that I don't know how to achieve the higher level goal of helping the students at this point. It just seems like the options are
Does the
not
quarterly
available
report
to us.
get
The
the
good
sense
options
that
are not available.
basically the legislature with this block transfer has created a problem that is really a problem? And something needs to be done about it.
The really obvious thing to me is it's so simple, really. You just encourage students to transfer in every single thing they've learned, whether it's from a community college or it's something they learned on their own. It doesn't matter. You just have to have advising exams. There has to be some way of administering an exam, which is not like for a grade, it's for advising. And then the advisors can tell the students, you know, you've got a good start on data structures, but you're not there yet.
I agree. The only big issue with exams is for smaller programs, they just don't have the staff to write exams. I mean, if we could create some sort of standardized exam like they do for mathematics, which I think is going to come in the next 5 to 10 years, but until that, it's going to be challenging.
But you can
I'd like to
start
point
with
out,
just
though,
the exam from the previous year.
Yeah, we just give them the final from the class.
so the one issue is if we leave this out, then if you look at it from the college point of view, the community colleges, they will now have, this is going to, if they're going to match up to the FOS, so they're going to have an associate's degree that has only programming fundamentals 2. And they're going to, and we're going to say, oh, you're a computer scientist and you only had 4 programming hours, and that makes you the equivalent. So I really don't see how we can leave this and 1436 out. I mean, just, it really is.
And that comes back to the same comment, that is, we have to look at the size of the FOS we end up with, because that might be a determining factor.
And right now, are we looking at the Programming Fundamentals 3 course with a recommendation that the ACGM be changed so that Math 2305 is a prerequisite or a co-requisite or one or the other?
Well, we do co-requisite because sequencing-wise, we can't require it as a prereq. It increases the critical path.
So if the wording was that it was either a co-req or prereq?
Yeah, that was the wording I chose. And that's just, from, at my institution, if you say co-req, they mean you have to take it at the same time. So if you've already taken it, you still have to take it again, which makes no sense. So that's why.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
but that's the, co-req actually means taken at the same time. So you have to say prereq or co-req.
For us, it's better to have it as a prereq than a correct, but we do it for critical path reasons.
Let me just make a small comment what you said about, and I completely agree what you said. One of the initiatives for 60/30 was actually helping these new initiatives that you mentioned about the K-12, the high school students taking courses. There's a challenge about these constraints that you were mentioning, because these kids who are taking the math, they don't arrive to the data structures or the programming fundamentals 3. Computer science education could call it CS3. They just barely arrive with calculus 1, and I'm not so sure if that will be a prerequisite or a core request for discrete math. But these kids, they don't arrive with the discrete math at that point. Sharp kids, very sharp kids, highly motivated, a lot of time in their lives, but they don't have that prereq, or they in calculus 1, or they're just about to finish calculus 1 when they take in that course. that is one of those constraints that Bruce was talking about, because one of the initiatives is to help the students to go from high school, just take it directly to our courses. But this is the constraint that we're facing right now. I would like to have those just as a prerequisite, actually, but to be honest, the reality is that they won't be able to take it. We can stop them for one semester but they will lose their powers by then. So that's a consideration that we should just take into account.
Yeah, I sort of feel like, okay, if it's left out and a student's FOS complete, I don't have a solution for them. I would probably say I don't want to transfer such a student. If it's in, we still need to sort of like see what they know, and like some fraction won't know enough, and then we have to have some way to ameliorate that in a way that doesn't create ABET headaches. Like that would require some sort of a 3,000 level supplemental course of some sort for us, I think, to create. I'm just thinking from a practical point of view of like how you would do it with so students don't die. Since, like as Bruce said, that's this is the goal, is you want them to transfer as smoothly as possible.
Scott raised a very interesting point. I hadn't realized it before, but let me underscore it. I think, Scott, you said this, that from the perspective of community colleges, two-year schools, we want those schools to offer a two-year program in computer science that takes the student to a good finishing point. Because I guess, right, most students going through a community college are not going to be transferring to a four-year school. They're going to end at two? At least we want to accommodate that population. And what you pointed out is that whatever we put into the FOS, two-year schools are going to teach to that. They're going to design their programs around that course, that body of courses. So if we leave out Programming 3, community colleges will be incentivized to not teach Programming 3, yet that's a very important class for the students that are going to be computer programmers after 2 years of college. It's just another example to me of trying to build one program that fits all. And it's really hard to do. We've got a population of students going through two-year schools that want to transfer, another population that don't want to transfer. They need different programs.
Well, that's why you have an AS and an AAS, I believe. So we teach the AAS. Having a computer science degree, I did not go through this college to get, I went there for my math credits to move on to the university, because there was no point in me taking community or computer science classes from there, because I could get it all from the university and just focus on paying less for my math classes.
So then in a two-year school, there's two degree tracks. One is intended for students that want to transfer, and the other is intended for ones that are not aiming to transfer.
Like going into the workforce.
To your point, can community colleges design a two-year program for the terminal students?
Yes.
That includes Programming 3?
Yes.
Yes.
Some do,
Oh.
yes.
I think that would be a great outcome. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, but just speak, I mean, because we have these students look at the options they have, and they take the one they think is going to be easiest. So they will probably take the one that doesn't include it and say, I'm happy with that.
I think it's an advising issue.
The interesting thing is with the AAS, it's included in both at Tarrant.
Yes.
So the easy way out isn't going to happen.
And your transfers from Del Mar?
Predominantly, we get some from the Valley as well. I mean, we get from everywhere, but
So there, do you know, it's taught, Programming 3 is taught for their students that are terminal degrees? I think, because at Blinn, I think that's the way it is now, right? So, I mean, I think for myself, among the choices in listening to my advisors, sort of if we're going to have FOS complete students, the least bad choice would be to put it in and then to effectively create some 300 level supplemental class for those students that don't know enough to, based on evaluating them, versus the other choice, of course, is if they, because if it's not in there and they didn't take it, then we'd have to effectively just make a 3,000 level class to, and that creates havoc with their curriculum then.
Yeah, but, and that's the other thing, I mean, if all of the four-year colleges move it to a three-year, people aren't going to take it at junior college because it won't transfer. And so I think it will, the effect will be that very few community college students will be taking this programming fundamentals 3 at junior colleges.
Right, but the logical place for it is, for us is at the sophomore level, because otherwise the critical path is too long to graduate when you look at all the other classes that depend on it that come later. In particular, I'm thinking in terms of the operating system sort of classes like that are programming language design courses and stuff that assume you already have more of that, and then our later, but we can't add a semester to our critical path or we'll get taken out and shot. We might exceed 4 years of critical path. That would be a serious problem. You can't move it later. It would totally mess up your curriculum, right, if it was later.
Yeah, it can't be moved later.
Well, the solution may be to not move it later, but give it a higher number. The data structures class.
To what end?
To separate the real data structures class from programming data structures. In some sense.
Well, like I said, we combined several, from decades ago to now, we combined several things into
Again,
one, and then,
fine.
but
But most universities separate those classes. They're not, programming data structures is not the same as data structures.
So
In some sense, Austin and A&M are exceptions.
So we have 1,900 undergraduate majors, and you're proposing a structural change in our program to accommodate the 10 or so external transfers that we get who have taken programming 3 at a community college.
and our FOS complete.
Tail wagging the dog here.
No, I'm not, yes.
And our FOS complete, which may be an empty set too, right? So. Is there any more discussion on this, or we should go ahead and vote? The motion was for 2436 with the recommendation to modify it to make Math 2305 a prereq or co-req. So all in favor of that? How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I guess I have to vote in favor as the least bad choice here. Okay. All opposed? 1, 2, 2.
And no abstain, so that was 14 and 2.
Well, I move that we add discrete structures to the field of study.
Discrete math. you mean.
Discrete math,
This just not.
2305,
Math 2305, discrete math.
All right, I second that.
Discussion. More discussion. Okay. Like I said, the obvious issue wasn't just in terms of the number of the schools that were teaching, it wasn't really high, but
That's not an issue.
that maybe it's just the demand issue.
Yeah, I believe we'll teach it if we want our students to have an FOS option.
Yes.
We'll teach it.
Yeah, it can be added. That's not an issue.
Can we make it co-listed with a computer science title too? Because that's the one we would prefer, is a computer science approach.
We'd have to modify the ACGM.
Yeah, I'm talking
I
about
think
modifying the ACT.
all we can do here, though, is make a recommendation to
Okay,
ACCM, right? Is that
Right.
correct?
So in the
add one.
previously we just approved was a motion to include Math 2305 as a prereq, co-req, right?
Okay.
The point that Bruce made earlier about the synchronization of the two was what led us to create our own discrete structures, we first worked with math to get them to do what we wanted, and they would do it for a while, and it's the same thing would happen with statistics. But we do allow our students to substitute discrete math for our discrete structures course, as long as it's taken as a
Yeah.
co-rec.
Well, my problem is, from a practical point of view, we make them take it in our department. And if it's not in the field of study and they come in, I don't see moving it to the 3,000 level.
Right.
And then they'd come in, field of study complete, and I can't require them to take discrete structures.
Well, if they take discrete math, would you be able to just to place that in as your discrete structures?
For the
few that are the FOS complete?
Yes, I could live with that.
Yeah, I mean, because we've suggested that, I mean, we added program fundamentals 3, and we've said it has to have a prereq co-rec of 2305. We almost have no choice but to add 2305 to, because we're saying you have to have it.
I agree.
Okay, so I forgot who made the motion?
I did.
Okay. And there was a second?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of including math 3205 discrete, I'm sorry,
2305.
2305, sorry, I wrote it down here wrong. In the FOS, all in favor? All opposed? 2 opposed. Okay. I think looking at the votes for the DREAM, so that the DREAM one, the items that had a significant number of votes was related to the computer organization. If we leave out the 1 vote for linear algebra and things like that. So back to discussion about this. Like 24, 25 is only a few schools are teaching. I think most of the 4-year schools here are at 3 hours as lecture only, not lab. It sounded like for 23, 25, if you put it in, that creates headaches for some. If you leave it out, it creates headaches for others.
Could we summarize? At this stage, how many hours do we have in the FOS, and how many of them overlap with the field of study?
We have 30 hours in the, right, if you look at the display here.
We've approved 27.
That's including computer organization, it would be 30. At a 23, 25.
27, and of those, physics and calculus are in the core, right?
Yes, they can count to the core.
So basically, 16 of them are in the core. So we have only 11 hours beyond the core. So if we take 42, which is the core now, plus 11 for the FOS, then a block transfer makes that equal to 60.
It's
correct?
Are you saying that discrete math is in the core?
No, the 2
The
calculus.
Cal 1, well,
Okay, so we already
14 left.
Well, this is already, this chart here already lists the computer organization in it.
Right. Without the computer organization, we have 27 hours in the field of study, of which 16 overlap with the core.
Yes.
Okay? So if we take a...
Certainly. It depends, I guess.
Well, actually, it is not 16 because the core has a 3-hour class. So it is more like 12.
Well, it depends. If you use the component area to put the labs in there, you can actually take all of those.
Right. Depends on what...
Depending on your university, how
It
you
depends on the
interpret.
university. So it could be anywhere from 12 to 16. Okay, but even if it is 16, even if it is 12, we still are, the total requirement for a field of study plus the core is a lot less than 60 hours. And then the legislature's block transfer will make this count for 60 or something like that at the four-year universities. So we have a huge problem.
I don't think that matters.
I don't think,
No,
is
no.
that what
If
Gary
a
said?
student-
I thought he said something a little different.
Yeah, if a student can transfer prior to getting 60 semester credit hours. They could transfer at any time. They could transfer with a 42-hour core and a 16-hour field of study, and that's fine. They only need 60 semester credit hours if they want to get a complete associate degree.
Correct, but what I'm talking about is the legislatures that if you transfer as FOS complete, the university cannot ask you to take any lower level classes. If the typical university
For your
has-
major. For your major. You can still take others to meet the degree requirements. So you still have to have 60 hours to meet the degree requirements.
To get an associate's degree.
Yes.
That's not what I'm worrying about. The worry is that the legislature forces a block transfer of, let's say, 50 hours, whatever it ends up being, to count for your total lower level requirements at the four-year university. And we have a discrepancy in the hours then.
That does not include the core, like English, your social sciences, or anything like that. This is just for your computer science
It's
degree.
just the CS-specific courses. Because this was the issue, like our advisors last night were telling me for our issue of we require chemistry, their intention was they would just require it be a restriction on the core courses, not, even if it's not in the FOS.
Okay, so what, wait a minute. So let's say that the total of FOS plus core curriculum is 50 hours. And the undergraduate, the lower level requirements, Texas XYZ, is 60 hours. What does the legislature require?
There's 10, in that case, there would be 10 extra semester credit hours that students could use to take free electives or to continue to take courses in computer science to follow their own interest or to better prepare themselves with the advice of advisors of what they would need to do well at the school that they want to transfer to.
So the four-year university can still ask them to take 10 extra hours?
They can't require them to take additional hours, the additional courses beyond the field of study. If a student has room in their degree plan, you can advise them to take the courses that you think would be helpful for them, but you just can't require it because students have to know that their courses will transfer and apply where they want to go.
All right?
But back to my point before, and I'm just unclear on how it works. If I move some of the courses that are my 1,000 and 2,000 levels to 3,000 levels because they're not in the field of study, am I messed up in terms of requiring too many 3,000 and 4,000 level courses? Is there a requirement like that?
Well, that would have to be up to your institution. I don't think it would be a good idea to take a course away from the community colleges and move them to the upper division, to take a course that's offered in the ACGM and then to put it in your upper division just so that you can keep it in the degree plan. Those courses, if they're in the ACGM, they're in there for a good reason. And community colleges need to know, and students at community colleges need to know that they can take those courses and have them transfer, and institutions all know what that course is and at what level. It's kind of gaming the system to take a course and move it to the upper division unless it really, really needs to be there, unless you're really offering substantially different course content than what's already offered at the ACGM course.
But aren't you talking about courses that aren't in the ACGM, but that are currently in your lower level requirements?
Yeah, like we have a seminar, freshman seminar, for example.
Yeah, if you have a course that's not in the ACGM, then it's entirely up to you where to offer it, at the upper division or lower division. And if you want to move it, you could.
But if they kept it at the lower division, they wouldn't be allowed to require a student to have it if a student transfers in FOS complete.
That's right.
Which is the issue.
So I'd have to move it to the 3,000 level. By the way, speaking of the freshmen, this was a thing for me. Your freshman seminar is a
181.
and it's a computer science course.
Yeah, 1 credit.
So what's going to happen to it? Because we have a course like that too.
Well, that's, if it's not in the FOS, the student that comes in FOS complete, then we don't have a mechanism for them to take that. Now, that course is, it's a learning, we do have some ABET issues in it, all those sort of cultural kind of things, but it's more about, you know, we originally put it into place more about, let's try to boost the number of like women and minority students in computer science, and teach them more about, it's not just hacking, sitting in a cube in a windowless room or something like that, was more the motivation of that course in the first place. We didn't have it for many decades, right? And so we added it in for those purposes. So now it is kind of like a, here's all the different things that is covered in computer science. It's cultural, I would say.
Okay, because we have ours isn't quite that way. We also treat it as introduction to the department. We require it in their first semester, so they learn all the rules, they learn all the curriculum issues,
we don't
they
do
learn
any
what
of
the
that.
different types of engineering are. They, but it's mostly introduction to the department and the degree. We also have ethics in there, and.
At UDD, we have 2. There is an introduction to the school and an introduction to the major. Together, they add up to 3 hours. And that might be another thing to look at. For example, could we put in the field of study an introduction to computing class? What we do now is that if somebody comes in as transfer, we ask them to replace. It does not make sense to put a student that has 2 years already in a freshman experience class. So what we do is we substitute the freshman experience 3 hours with an upper level elective in the major.
Yeah, but ours is 1 credit, so the substitution is more complex.
It's going to be complex. But most universities have an introduction to XYZ type of class. Is that correct?
Are you referring to like just because I mean, we have an introduction to computer or computing in ACGM, but it's more of, this is computer hardware, cybersecurity, that kind of thing. It's not more like you're describing.
It's almost like computer literacy.
Yeah, pretty
And
much.
it's a
Yeah, so
3
that's-
credit course, right?
Yes, it is a 3-credit course.
Yeah, I mean, we also have we call it Pro Skills, of course, that covers a lot of these things for ABET. The problem is, though, all of ours are different, and
Yeah, the number of
so
hours.
we can't really put it in the FO. Yeah, most of us are 1, but some
Is
are
it
not.
possible to have a junior level 1-credit course just for the transfer students that didn't get it in their freshman year?
No, because you
treat
can't
your
do that.
transfers different than your native
Yeah.
students.
As an ABET?
Yeah.
Well, no, the law doesn't. The law won't allow that. I mean, it says if you can't require any other courses, and we would be requiring another
Well, I'm
course.
saying, but if it was a junior level course designed for transfer students, students transferring in as their junior year, and then this is a course that would introduce them to your program.
Yeah, but you can't, not if they're FOS complete. My understanding is you can't do that. Even, doesn't matter what level you've put it at, you can't actually say, no, you're missing something, because it's not required of everybody else.
Well, let me ask a different question. I don't know if this is even possible for our university, but could we make it what we consider introduction to the department and the degree? If we got permission to make it an engineering course, that would be okay? And still have it be a 1,000 level course? It doesn't make sense to make it a 3,000 level course.
I don't think so. I think it would still be a requirement, rather than what you called it. Could you make it just an orientation? Does it have to be a class? Does it have to be a credit hour? Could it be a meeting with all of your transfer students?
Well, ours is like, it's a once or twice a week seminar, right?
Could it be,
Covering
yeah,
many different
a
topics.
0 semester credit hour? It doesn't have to be a course, doesn't even have to be on the books. But could it be an orientation? Could you call it an orientation for your transfer students? And cover some of these issues over the course of 6 or 10 hours, spread over a course of a couple of weeks?
The problem you run into is faculty load.
Well, practically, we don't, if they're a transfer student, we're not really making them take that class, because it's like, as was pointed out, it's like, they're already in a different point in their curriculum, so it's more just finding the way you do the substitution for that 1 hour. For that particular case. I mean, we have another practical problem. We have an Engineering 102 computing class required of all College of Engineering majors, including ours. That one will not be in the FOS either. That, from our own students' perspective, that's material that in theory they got in high school or in a community college anyway, so I'm not so worried about that class. That affects other engineering departments more so, because it's not in the engineering FOS either. So those classes to me are minor issues from a pedagogical point of view in terms of the outcome, because like I said, we put them in place for a different purpose. It's not in the same category as like the data structures and algorithms issue we just talked about.
Well, the one we have is for incoming freshmen and transfer students. And again, we consider it really important. We barely squeeze it in a one semester course, but it is a 1 hour course. It meets once a week for an hour.
And I'm assuming you can't just sort of say, because we increasingly now have 0 credit hour courses that, you know, of course, the state probably thinks those are great, right? Because they don't have to pay for them. But, you know, those are fit in for these extra experience type of things. It's a bookkeeping device to force students to do something, but they don't have to pay for it or something, so. But the state doesn't allow us to do 0 credit hour, 691 hours. Otherwise, all the faculty would run to that. So, we were talking about the impact of this computer organization on the, it sounds like it's not a factor in terms of the 60-hour limit and things like that. And my understanding is that the student, if you're requiring more courses in the lower level than the FOS has, so the student who comes in FOS complete, it doesn't have, in our case, 126 hours at the end, they're gonna have to take something else, right? Graduate. Because
Yes, I
obviously
mean,
for
like, remember, the
accreditation, we'd
political
have to do
the
that.
political science field of study was only 6 semester credit hours over the core. You know, their field of study was 12 semester credit hours, 6 of which could fit easily into the core. So there's just more time for those students to take free electives or to go ahead and transfer and get on with their university career.
Okay, so the point is, like in our case, like with this 181 1 credit course, the student coming in, if their FOS complete, won't have it, so they're short 1 credit hour for graduation. They're gonna have to take something else to make up the credit hour, right? Because, you know, we can't have students graduating with less than 126 credit hours, or, you know, I'm not even ask ABET to come visit then.
Well, the solution is to, if a student like this is required to take an upper level, make up the hour at the upper level.
Yeah, that's one of my question is, they have to still, if the FOS does not have as many hours as our 100, 200 level requirements, they're gonna have to take something else to get the same total number of credit hours in the degree?
I suppose so, right?
Okay.
Right, just
But
so that
how many- I mean-
by graduation, I mean, just so long as they get to the 120 without going over 120.
Well, we're 126.
Well, yes,
Unless you've been approved to go over 100.
Yeah, we were 128, but we dropped kinesiology, so we're down to 126.
Okay.
So do y'all require more than 60 hours for the freshman, sophomore year?
The way, we put it in the catalog is sort of artificial. It works out to, for the 128-hour degrees, it's all 16 and a half hours a semester for 4 years, right? No student actually follows that. So I think it's kind of very often it's 15 1 hour, one semester, or 17 the other semester in our example curriculum. But, students come in with all sort of transfer AP, there's no standard student, right?
But the important thing is how many of them have a lower level number versus a high upper level number.
We do have
that's where the block transfer comes in.
Yeah, we have a fair number that come in as U3. So, like I said, because I'm talking to these honor students tonight, some of them already, they're basically sophomores with 90 hours, and because they had a ton of dual credit and AP and all this other stuff, and they're just planning on taking a bunch of, minors or other stuff before they graduate. They're just packing in more education in that time, not graduating sooner, because their parents are paying, I guess, so.
So for this, we have, I'm not quite sure what we're discussing as the part. It seems like we have to add this, for ABET issues and also for 2-year degrees. So is the discussion, is that correct? Does everybody agree that everybody agree we have to add it? So the question is whether it should be 3 or 4 hours?
Well, like I said, there were very few 4-hour offerings in the state now.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what we're trying to figure out.
3 hours. So if it's in here, the solution I would take, because we teach at a 300 level, is I would maybe look at what they taught, and then I would say, well, you didn't really learn the material in the 300 level class, so I can make you take it. So effectively, it's a placement process. I think I could defend that process based on looking at what they.
I'd just like to observe, though, I think the last 30 minutes of our discussion has not once focused on what's in the best interest of transfer students. It's focused entirely on what's in the best interest of our organizations and our jobs as bureaucrats. I think we should step back from this discussion and think about really the important thing. What's right for the students here? Should they be taking computer organization as part of lower division core, or let that be handled by the 4-year schools?
I would like to make the motion to keep this course as part of the FOS, as a 3-credit-hour course.
Well, that motion's already been made.
Excuse me?
We've already made that motion. We tabled the
then-
discussion. We're back to the discussion.
I second it, then.
Discussion.
For Christian, so you seem to be the most knowledgeable on the ACM and CRA stuff. They also list this material to be covered in the second year, right?
That is correct.
So that I think, to follow up on something you said, that's for students that are doing their associate's degree, and then they're going to go off doing software development. Then this is knowledge that would be useful for them to have, right? And I have a path to make sure that the students that come in FOS complete acquire any missing knowledge, because we're teaching it at a 300 level using like a testing approach like Bruce had talked about, and then what do they really know, and then learn that course, take a course appropriately for that purpose that I could defend to ABET. When our faculty were pushing for the 4-hour version last night, it was mostly based on just the assumption that 4 hours is more rigorous than 3 hours. That was purely their motivation, because they didn't really, as Bruce pointed out, didn't have a great insight into the true content of the course. So.
I would second that. I think at Blinn, we're much more comfortable with it being a 4-hour course where you have some reinforcement of the concepts with the lab.
Right, but like I said, very few schools are teaching it at 4 hours now.
So is that that was a comment earlier. Isn't it just isn't it just a check that says 24, 30, 24, 25 and 23, 25 are the same, except for that 1 hour, which is a bucket. He used the example of a bucket. It's a check mark, right? So you get credit for that 20, if you took it as a 4-hour course, you get credit for the 3-hour course.
So just as a pulse, how many of us here think it should be 4 hours? So 2, 4, 6, it's almost half.
Yeah, it was sort of 50-50, roughly 9 and 7 division in the votes that were done last night.
Yeah, because I mean, I prefer the 3, but I don't have a problem with changing ours to 4, because it does add more rigor.
Yeah,
It
we're the
gives us,
same.
I mean,
3 or 4
you
is
know,
fine.
it does cause problem with now we have to add another credit hour, but I'm sure you know, we can deal with those
what
issues.
I thought what Gary said is if you took it as 4 in the FOS and your course is 3, it just absorbs and it just counts for your 3.
Yeah, no, but the problem is if our students take it as a 3, then they're not FOS complete. So it won't affect the 4 years as much as it'll affect the 3 years, because if they teach as a 3-hour and the FOS says it must be 4, then they're not FOS complete.
I think they are. I think it counts no matter what.
No, if the FOS says it has to be a 4-hour course and the community college teaches a 3, the student doesn't meet the FOS.
Oh, yeah,
If we
I see
put
what
an
you're saying.
or, they would. So we could do that option. We could say
Well-
the 3 or the 4 credit, but.
Yeah, the old FOS said 3 or 4.
But I was just trying to get a pulse, because, I mean, adding more rigor isn't a bad thing. It does cause problem with credit hours, but it's only 1 credit hour, so.
So modify the motion for the 24, the 4-hour?
Again, I was just trying to get, it's 6. I don't know how many are in
okay either
favor
way.
of the 3, but I mean, if that's what it takes, I would be okay with the 4-hour, but I'm okay with the 3-hour.
I move to amend the
too.
motion to approve 24, 25 instead of 23, 25.
Second.
Well, we have to do the first motion first. We can cancel the 23, we can vote on the 23, 25, or we can remove the motion before we vote on the other one, I think.
What is
Because the motion was to take the previous motion off the table. I'm in our faculty senate, so.
Yeah.
So on the motion to take the previous motion for approving 23, 25, how many vote to take it off the table? How many vote against taking it off the table? Okay. So
Can you read the vote count for the people watching online?
So, so back to how many vote to take it off the table, so we can vote on that, okay? That, 1, 2, 3, 4. 9, maybe? 10, okay. And how many vote to leave it on the table? 3, okay.
4?
4. Okay, so,
And then abstain.
and abstain?
2.
1 abstain. Okay,
But then we're
so the
missing
motion
one.
is to take it off the table, so we could discuss it anymore. Or how many, or well, let's just vote on that. So I ask for a motion to vote on whether 23, 25 should be,
24, 25.
well, the original motion was 23, 25.
But we just took it off the table. So the motion now is for 24, 25.
So I guess my definition of take it off the table is the opposite of yours, but so the sentiment was like to cancel it, okay? So so I asked for a motion to include 24, 25 in the FOS.
Do we not want to leave or give the or option in this one, since there is such a split between?
Okay, so then does anyone want to make a motion to include 23, 25, or 24, 25 in the FOS?
I'll make the motion.
And I second that.
Okay, now discussion about that.
So if it's an or, which is fine, and my course is 3 hours, but they take 4 hours, do I have to find a location for that extra hour?
I interpreted what Gary said as no, you don't.
Then I like it, okay.
And in my case, since our program is a 4-hour course, would my department have to accept the 3-hour course as transfer credit?
If they were FOS complete.
But you're teaching it at the 300 level, right?
That's right, and it's 4 hours.
And we are as well, and so I interpret that to mean that I can, because then it's the rule about duplication that applies, so then I feel I can quiz the students to see what they know, and if they know it, fine. If they don't, they got to take it.
Yeah, we're on the same table. Basically, ours is upper level as well. So we would have to.
So if this is what the 4-year schools are going to be doing, how is it in the students' best interest for us to add this to the FOS? They're going to think that they're going to be moving on to a 4-year school and they're going to get credit, and instead they're going to be hit with an entrance exam.
To some, not all.
Well, I guess if they all get an exam, but if they, for our feeder schools like Blinn, I assume we would make sure that it works, right? So that the students coming in would be good.
Yeah, I mean, it's only going to be in the rare case that somebody's FOS complete to your school and isn't one of your feeder schools, because you should already have an MOU with your feeder schools that they're teaching the right stuff and you just automatically take it.
We do, and in this case, it's only 4-year schools. We only have that agreement with some other 4-year schools.
Yeah, this is going to be a problem because we have it. It's a different class. It is not. There is overlap, but it is not the same class.
But it's at a 300 level.
Yes.
So you could still quiz the students to see do they get.
Well, but the thing is that a quiz probably they will pass part of it and fail. Yeah, because it is not really. It overlaps, but it is not the same class.
And the issue, I think, from the student expectation point of view is if the 4-year school course has the same common course number, then you're saying it's the same class, right?
Pretty much.
But if it's a different, but if the course at the 4-year school is a different title and it's a different course number and it doesn't have a common course number, then to me, you're not setting that expectation. Do the students sort of know enough to know that, or this is sort of comes into advising issues? And again, to me, the feeder schools, that's not a problem because you work together to eliminate any problems, right? And so then you know what their students are learning, and you know, so that it can transfer without a concern.
Well, basically, we have very few cases that somebody comes with that class because of the agreements we have with the feeder schools. And the way I remember it, if I have seen cases like this, I have rejected them to transfer credit because it is not, the overlap is not strong enough.
But as Bruce said, you don't want to mislead the students as well, right? You have to somehow make sure you're setting the students' expectations correctly.
Yeah, so if the 4-hour is more likely for those who require 3,000 to pass, then that's probably better for the student. If it doesn't, then a 3-hour is better for the student because they're...
Obviously, if there is overlap, a 4-hour class is more likely to overlap more than a 3-hour class. So a 4-hour class is preferable to the 3, but neither one is a perfect solution. So that's basically the situation. So essentially, I'm going to vote against this, but the 4-hour is better than, it's less objectionable than the 3-hour. Yes.
The motion was for either or, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so. Any more discussion about that? So all in favor of including COSC 2325 or COSC 2425 in the FOS? 7, 8, 9, 10. And how many are against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What was that number? The vote again was what?
10 to 6.
10 to 6. Okay.
There's only 15 of us. How did that
Well,
work?
that motion passes.
16, 14.
So except for Math 302, this 2305, this is the same set of courses essentially that were in the 2003 version of the FOS, except they're 3-hour versions of the math and the other programming courses were allowed.
So 14,
And we removed 1436.
Yeah, we took out the fundamentals course out, and
You take out one
effectively
and
that's
add
by
one.
Added
prereq.
discrete math.
Yeah.
I do have another note on both of those that we just approved. They both have a prerequisite of Programming Fundamentals 1.
20, yeah, all these sort of other courses have at least the 1436 or 1336 as a prereq, right?
Yeah, so
Yes, but it's
I
not.
think we should probably recommend
We
that to
should
change it
recommend making a
to
change.
Fundamentals 1 or Fundamentals 2.
Or equivalent.
Either way, yeah.
Right.
I guess the way we teach our computer organization course, that's not critical to our teaching of it. But of course, it's a 300 level class, so
Well, it
they
just,
already had all that other stuff before they came
yeah,
in.
but as you said before, if you put it in as a prerequisite, that means that the two-year colleges will enforce it. And
Right.
so maybe that's not the best prerequisite.
So
Yeah,
for,
We could make the same recommendation that we did for the 1437, that we say 1436 or equivalent preparation, and that way each college can decide.
Yeah, but I prefer to just say 36 or 37, just because then we don't have to deal with that extra philosophy of doing, but that's, okay. I mean, do people think that if somebody hasn't taken any, well, if all they've done is high school, are they okay to do architecture? I'm okay with that, but from a practical standpoint, it just seems easier to say the Programming Fundamentals 1 or 2.
I like that solution, the 1 or 2.
okay, so the proposed motion you're making is to recommend that the prereq for 2325 and 2425 be modified to say COSC 1436 or 1437,
That's correct.
as opposed to just 1436 today. Okay. Is there a second? More discussion?
Is there a problem with just requiring 1337 as a prerequisite?
If the students are not destined to try to transfer, then obviously the way it was being taught now did not require 1437.
True, that is true.
You could take it at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's more of
Make it
a,
prerequisite, you cannot.
And for us,
it's the critical path type of thing. I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but then you have students, for the students who aren't prepared for 37, if they go into 36, then they couldn't take architecture until their junior year, which may or may not be a problem. I think most of them do that anyway, so.
and we at Blinn will be struggling to put that class on once a year. So we have to be careful with the prereqs, timing.
Well, that's what, if it's an or, it doesn't constrain you anymore. But this would be a prereq, the motion is to make it a prereq for both the 2325 and 2425, is that correct? Yes. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor of adding that prereq? That is unanimous.
And for clarification, we're recommending that we add it to both 2325 and 24, 25 in the ACGM.
An observation, in view of the list we have there with 1, 2, 1, 2, since we eliminated 1436 or 1336, should the names be changed maybe to Programming 1 and Programming 2 rather than Fundamentals?
ACGM.
Well, that's a long-standing name for those courses, right?
Too much trouble, okay.
Like I said, to me, it's data structures and algorithm for the programming 3, but primarily data structures.
Yeah, and you don't have to use the ACGM names. I mean, you just have to be able to do the TCN equivalent, say that, you use the TCCN to say that's equivalent to that, and use whatever name you want.
A question on, we have 3 or 4 different recommendations that we voted on. What will happen if the ACGM does not change based on our recommendations? Do our votes still stand when we voted for these courses with the recommendation that the ACGM changes?
Well, yeah, the recommendations to the ACGM committee and the Learning Objectives Committee, which reviews the computer science courses, those are separate from the courses that we've approved in the ACGM. I don't think their acceptance, I mean, it's not the committee's intention, is it? That if for whatever reason your recommendations about the prerequisites and co-requisites are not incorporated in the ACGM, then we're still standing with our recommended courses, right?
We can always go in and add those at our own institution, because we can always
Okay,
add to the
that's all- well, that's
ACGM.
perhaps,
Right,
yeah.
so
The-
shouldn't
It's
be
a
a
little
problem.
complicated to make changes to the ACGM. It goes through a couple of stages. There's a Learning Objectives Committee, as I explained yesterday, and then there's an ACGM committee that hears the recommendations of the Learning Objectives Committee, and then they make the changes. And then, of course, everything that we do here goes through the final full board, their quarterly board meetings. So there are a couple of more hoops to jump here. The ACGM committee, I believe, meets quarterly. Perhaps it's twice a year, but they may meet as well as 4 times a year. I don't know when the next Learning Objectives Committee will meet for computer science. We call those committees as needed. And as of today, it's needed. So there will be a Learning Objectives Committee more than likely put together in the next 6 months or so.
Right, because if you look at it, the most important one was really about the discrete math co-rec, but that recommendation didn't include modifying the content of 2436 there, which was, that was the sort of like by implication that to me, I took that recommendation as more of a hope that that would be a future direction to so then, once it's a co-rec, then the instructors of 2436 can depend on that knowledge.
If we made that recommendation and you have a school that does not teach 2305 as a co-rec, does that mean they still complete the FOS or they do not because it doesn't meet what we say in the FOS?
I think the motion that we actually voted on was to include 2436 and to rank a recommendation to the committee to add that as a co-rec or pre-rec.
That was not clear in the votes. I think some of us took it as recommend, some of us took it as required. So maybe that we need to clear that up.
The wording that I guess I wrote down here was all recommended we had said in the motions.
And that's what I typed as well.
All right, fine. That's
Well, technically, everything we're doing here today is a recommendation. You know, I mean, to be precise about the language. That's not to say that if we have given our preference to the Learning Objectives Committee, that's going to weigh very, very, very heavily, okay? I can't promise you exactly what they'll approve. They'll have to do the homework. They'll look at all the existing syllabi. They'll compare all the notes, what's being done across institutions. They'll talk about it. Maybe if they turn it down, they'll have a good reason for turning it down. They won't do it just out of whim. And same thing with the ACGM committee. The recommendation of the Learning Objectives Committee will be taken extremely seriously, and it would be rare for them to overturn it unless they had some very good reasons for it. So I think even though it's a recommendation, I think it's pretty close to us saying this is a change that we anticipate being made in time for the field of study. In the purposes of time now, because we still have a little bit left to do and we need to stop right at 12 for the folks doing the broadcasting, are we prepared to lock this down now? Is this our final field of study? Can we make a motion to that effect, that this be our proposed field of study?
I'll make a motion
Or
that
that
this
we
is-
send out for public comment? Okay.
I made the motion, but this is our final field of study for computer science.
Seconded already, so some.
Okay.
Can we discuss it for a second? When we send this out for public comments, can we add our specific recommendations to the ACGM down below it so that people reviewing this will see the recommendations as well?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we can get public comment on the recommendations. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
And when is the proposed time of effectiveness for this? When does it go into play?
Well, if public comment will be, if I get this out this week, public comment will be 30 days, so that'll be a month from now. That'll be what, November the, November 9th. Oh, that is really pushing it. And then you've got to have time to review the public comments and weigh in. So that would be November 20th. The deadline for getting things onto the December cause and January board meetings is like November 10th. I can see if I can get an exception to that, but I don't know. If it doesn't go, and it probably won't, to the December, January meetings, it would go to the March, April meetings, would be approved by the April board, and then would go into effect in fall 2020, if it's approved by the board. Because we give everybody a year after it's been approved by the board to change their catalogs, to get adjusted, to staff up, to be able to prepare for the change.
Do we make an adjustment to the motion that we do approve this with the exception, like Ginger mentioned, that the recommendations are mentioned on there? When we listen to
It doesn't
public?
need to be a motion.
Okay.
I'll include it in the public comments for sure. And I'll make sure to send the wording of that to our, to Ginger and Christian and Hank to make sure it's correct before it goes out for public comment. Quickly now, with this in mind.
Do we need to vote on that?
I need to get your opinions about what programs this FOS would and would not apply to. So let me put this up on your screen.
I think we need to vote on the motion.
Need to vote on the motion?
Oh, did you vote on the final film study?
No.
We do need to vote on that.
So all in favor of the field of study, and then sending out the recommendations with the public comment period? All in favor? All opposed? Okay, and I'm going to abstain. Three abstentions.
3 abstain.
2 opposed, 3 abstentions.
Okay, thank you. Well, with that in mind, we have several.
I missed how many were in favor?
11.
11 in favor.
11:32.
For those of you who don't know, the coordinating board processes its data according to these classification codes for instructional programs, which is a national thing. It's not set by Texas. This is how data is recorded by all kinds of data crunchers all across the country for enrollments in various programs. And various programs and their subprograms are assigned CIP codes, kind of like the Dewey Decimal System, where you have, it breaks down further and further into numbers as things get more and more refined. The fields of study need to apply to programs in certain CIP codes. So we need to get the sense of the committee here as to which CIP codes would and would not apply to this. In the document I sent you at the top, there are all the programs in Texas that fall within the 1.1 CIP code, which is generally where computer science falls. At the end of that document, I included the definitions of these CIP codes. So I would like your feedback now. We can go through these by CIP code if you like, or you can just look at the programs that we offer in Texas and let me know which of these programs would not apply, would not use this CIP code, if any. Would it apply to digital and cyber forensics at Sam Houston?
No.
I don't believe so.
What about the 111003 CIP code generally? Well, it's probably easier to do this by CIP code. We okay with, I'm assuming, computer information sciences general, okay? It's pretty obvious. Artificial intelligence and robotics?
That's too specific.
Don't think so?
Would they need a separate lower division?
Sorry?
I'm mixed. It almost seems like they need the same lower division, but
Well, yeah, this is just lower division now. I mean, you remember that for most of these fields, all the action happens at the upper division in the junior and senior
I would just
year.
say no because we don't have one in Texas.
okay. Fair enough.
Okay. Information technology.
No.
However, going back to just because we don't have one now, the last field of study was 15 years, so are we going to have one in Texas in the next 15 years?
Well, we'll revisit this field of study in at least 5 years, perhaps sooner than that. But we're going to make a point to bring committees like this one back together. In fact, I forgot to mention to you earlier yesterday, by the way, that your term on the committee is good for 3 years. So if we meet again, in the next 3 years, we'll bring you back. The terms of the co-chairs are for 2 years. So if we meet again in 3 years, we need to elect co-chairs. When we meet again in 5 years, I'm hoping that many of you will be interested in being nominated again by your CAOs or CIOs to serve on the committee again, because we would like to have some overlap between this committee and the next committee that takes a look. So please keep this in mind as years go by. But back to the topic here, information technology, same lower division courses for IT?
No.
I'd say no.
Yeah, I'd agree, no.
In some sense, if computer science has higher requirements than information technology, if a student has a better background than what an information technology bachelor's degree requires, what is wrong with that?
Well, but who teaches IT at UTD?
Nobody.
Well, it's listed here as being information technology and systems at UTD.
There are programs in the School of Management, but I don't, they might be, that's what they call it.
So to me, it's, for the
don't wanna-
MIS, that's different. I would say you don't want to.
Fine.
This is the 401 code, right, we're talking about?
The
103 code.
11.0103.
Oh, the
Information
103.
technology.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see them, very few of them would take Calc 2.
But we already have physics 1 and 2. I mean, who will require all these?
Yeah, that's why I just don't think IT would need to, yeah.
Okay, so no for IT, it doesn't apply?
No.
Okay. Computer information and sciences other, I think we can cover that one. Computer programming, 1102. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Computer programming general, I suppose so. Computer programming specific applications.
Shouldn't all of this list be reduced? I mean, do you want to have a degree in computer programming rather than computer science?
Well, I don't think any schools in Texas offer these. This is a complete zip code.
This should be, yeah.
I know it's a little tedious, but we need
Well, I
to
think
check
that
them.
one applies because it's, again, the upper level is going to get more specific.
Yeah.
And
Computer programming vendor product certification. Oh, mercy. Probably so.
I would think. I would think so, yeah.
There's some fine distinctions here. Computer programming other, that would probably apply. Data processing?
I wouldn't think so.
No? No, everybody?
No.
no.
Same for data processing technology.
No.
No as well?
Yeah, these are all in the business school, really.
Information science studies.
No.
No, that's the library.
Library.
Computer systems analysis.
Looks like a technical degree rather than.
Here's the more fine definition there.
Like a systems analyst kind of thing, right?
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
I don't know why they'd ever need calculus and physics to do that class, to do that plan.
No.
No?
Yeah, I'm inclined to say no, it doesn't match. Again, I don't think anyone's teaching it.
Data entry?
Okay. Data entry microcomputer applications.
Yeah. No to all the
Oh,
06s.
yeah. I think 06 is, yeah, in general is no.
Keyboarding skills.
That's a no for that?
No.
1106?
These are little kind of obsolete zip codes here.
Where's the data processing?
Word processing. I don't think we have any degree
Yeah,
programs.
all the
in word
06s are
processing.
no's.
What?
All the 06s are no's.
Yeah.
Well, no, so also sixes. Okay, the next one is data entry microcomputer. Okay.
No.
The 07s. Here's where the meat and potatoes is. Computer science, computer
that's us.
science.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
That's our department.
Computer software and media applications. Yes.
And no.
Well, but that includes computer engineering, is that?
It says computer software no.
Yeah, that's
under-
reported under the engineering CIP codes 14, so I don't think we need to touch that. Fortunately, I'm glad we don't have to try to solve computer engineering and computer science.
So I'm
at the
assuming
same field of study.
1108 is a no.
I think it's
Well,
a no.
does that apply? Yeah, because does that apply more towards like digital media and
Like web
game development and stuff like that, or because that's what I would take it as.
Visualization.
Well, here's more explanation in 0801 here, if that helps.
Email.
Yeah, I would say no to that.
No.
No to 1108.
Right, that's what it looks like.
That is in our arts and technology programs.
More like our visualization department.
Data modeling, warehouse, database administration.
No.
So no.
Technical.
I think any of the 08s.
Yeah, oh, graphics would.
Yeah, I think all the 08s
Or
kind of fall
no's.
into that.
08 for computer graphics, no.
Actually, that's probably a yes, but
There's no to this 080 as well, software and media applications.
what do we think about the graphics?
Think about the graphics, yeah.
I mean,
Well-
Yeah,
that's
a
my area,
popular-
and
Do we offer programs
that's,
in that?
you know,
I interpret this to be like our visualization degree that's offered in our School of Architecture, color theory, and that it overlaps with CS in the sense of CS is about building the tools versus visualization's about production.
I think for us, it falls under our digital. We have a digital media as well that we work hand in hand with UH, and I know almost all the classes we were passing with the FOS are not on there because they don't require hardly any programming or anything like that.
Right,
It's
so
more
this
on the
is
visual
not a-
side.
Yeah,
but
so
that's-
this doesn't match. To me, this is, because our Viz students, they have to have an art portfolio and all this other kind of
Exactly,
stuff, right?
yeah.
So
This is in arts and
Exactly.
humanities at UTD as well.
Okay, so there's one at A&M and one at University of Houston in that CIP code. Make you okay with it not covering that CIP code?
I don't think it does.
Okay. 1109s,
Technology.
no.
which
Yeah, I
is
would say no on those.
computer systems networking,
No.
telecommunications.
No.
The whole thing is technology type of stuff. And
that's true for 1110 as well.
And no on 1109s, no on 1110s.
There a consensus on the 1109s?
Yes. I don't
Yes
think any
to,
applies.
yes to have it covered?
No, it does not cover it.
Yeah, no to not have it covered.
Correct.
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 Okay, we're scratching in 1109s. 1110, IT management.
No.
No.
All those are no's.
System administration.
Those all no's.
We do have programs in that in the state.
But all those 1110s are no for this FOS.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I think that's completely separate.
Technician type stuff.
Can we talk, just humor me, about computer systems, networking, and telecoms? (1109) and '01.
Are you thinking that we need to include it?
I'm biased because my degree was in computer networks, telecoms networks, so.
Well, and we offer an AAS and a certificate in this and several different specialties, but we don't have any of the.
Cisco certified.
That's one of them, but we don't have any of the programming, hardly any of the programming tied behind it or anything like that.
We're talking about queuing theory analysis here, or stuff like this.
Yeah, this is material that's covered in those, the community colleges teach this material, right?
Yeah, there would, no
But in our
calculus
AA
or physics for these
Yeah,
folks.
exactly.
Not
We don't
transfer.
require calculus or physics for this at all.
Not transferable, so usually AAS.
Yes.
But the focus is people that are getting their certifications, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You have
These
to-
are all generally terminal.
In that job
They're done
market, you
after
have
this.
to have a certification, right?
Okay, the 1110, system administrator, system network management manager, computer information system security,
No,
web multimedia management, webmaster,
no.
IT services other, okay, sure, no 1110s.
Yeah, to me, these are all programs that the focus is at the community college level and
Okay,
offering
and the
that.
last ones are the sort of catch-alls, services and support other, and sciences and support services other.
We don't even know what that is, yes.
Say no because
Without a description, that one's hard because it has support in there, so.
Ones are covered.
Yes, let's see here, the ones that are covered,
I think it was just .02 and .07.
yeah, there's not many. What I'm concerned about is, are there several programs that are offered across the state that do produce a lot of students and do attract a lot of transfer students that either need to have a separate field of study advisory committee like this called for them, or do the numbers support this, and maybe we should consider having them apply to this one. It seems like we have a lot in, not a lot, but we have some in information technology, right?
I agree. I think we need an IT.
110103.
Well, that-
We
yeah,
got
that's
one
like
at
the-
F. We have A&M Central,
Well, this is
Stephen
the
F.
bi-
Austin.
These are kind of like historically business school MIS sort of department program.
Right, I think I agree, and I think they should have their own separate field of study for them.
Makes our
Make the
IT
School of Management suffer like we do.
Right.
Yes.
How do you handle, because is there like one FOS for all of the business school? You know, because as traditional business school, the first 2 years are common for all majors.
There is actually, I was
And then they
surprised. that
branch out.
The business field of study applies to like 4 different subdisciplines. They excluded economics as a separate discipline.
Well, yeah, econ's in a separate school, but my point is, because my daughter was a business major, that all the students take essentially the same courses the first 2 years, then they split out, and so it's in some sense best matched to the FOS of the, because the first 2 years are common for all their majors.
That's right. That's what the field of study, promotes. So, yes. So, okay. So what we do have it covering so far is it does cover 1101, Computer and Information Sciences General. It does cover Computer and Information Systems Other, Computer Programming General, computer programming specific applications, computer programming vendor product certification, computer programming other, information science studies, computer systems analysis. Well, I don't know. 1105, you excluded,
So 1105 is offered at the University of Houston.
yeah, see, you excluded this one, but not this one. And that probably, you mean to exclude probably 1105 if you're excluding 110501, don't you?
Oh, I thought we did.
That's what we thought, yes.
Okay. Same thing with 1104. Okay.
So 1104 is completely excluded?
Yes. There's only two in 1104. There's this general one, catch-all, and then the specific one, which. So that's all work. Oh, and we are also covering computer science, 1107. And that's it. Sound okay? Let me tell you then briefly in the little bit of time that we've got left about the 30-day public comment period. What will happen is I'll write up the field of study. I'll send it by our two co-chairs to make sure I have it correct in our secretary, to make sure the wording's correct. It will go out in an email via GovDelivery to all university presidents, all university provosts, chief instructional officers, and coordinating board liaisons, who are the people whose job it is on your campus. Every campus has one, to make sure that the field of study goes to the right people on your campus, the people in your computer science department, hopefully, and related departments, maybe if you have computer engineering, okay? We'll have 30 days where people can send in comments. They send them to me at a special email address that'll be on the memo. It's helpful if we hear from entire departments or entire institutions speaking with one voice. It's much easier to process that, and it carries more weight than if we just hear from each individual faculty member. I would rather hear from one person at Tarleton State University saying, we discussed this at our faculty meeting. Here's the stand of our faculty on the field of study, rather than hearing from Professor Smith, Jones, Davis, and, to do it all that way, there's a lot of repeated content. When that happens, I'll collect all the public comments and compile them into one document. Then we have to make a decision, which I will consult with our co-chairs about this, and also Gary and our coordinating board administration here on what to do next. It's a judgment call. If we have a lot of public comments, by which I mean like over maybe 25, if we have a lot of public comments and the temperature seems to be pretty high, if people are really despising it, or they're raging against it, or they're absolutely insisting that this is going to ruin our accreditation and there are big problems, or there's something that this committee really overlooked, like this just simply will not work with our XYZ. We have a required minor. This is impossible with our minor. I don't know. If there's big problems, then we will call you all back to Austin and we'll have another meeting face-to-face, a public meeting on the record where the public can come and speak. And sometimes they do when we have talk about public comments. If the public comments we get are a manageable number, if we get 10, 12, 15 public comments, they're pretty straightforward, they're pretty clear, here's my recommendation, then what we'll do is we'll put that in the form of a ballot where I'll email it to you and you can just check a box, yes or no, I accept this recommendation, and add a comment if you like about how things work. If we don't, and if we make changes to the field of study based on the public comments, which is fine, if we make changes to it, then it goes out for another 30-day public comment, and we keep doing this until we get a final field of study, okay? And you stop making changes, at which point it goes to a subcommittee of the full coordinating board called the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success, and they meet quarterly, and then if they approve it, then it goes to the full board 1 month later for the full approval, and then it goes into effect 1 year after, in the fall semester, 1 year after the board approves it. So like I said before, we're probably looking at the March, April cause and board committee meetings, unless this goes very smoothly and we just barely squeak by and get it onto the December cause and January board. When you respond to the public comments, okay, just like I said, how it's easier if the entire department speaks with one voice rather than each individual faculty member, the same goes for our response to the public comments. It's easier and more manageable if we remember the conversations that we had here today. We aired out the issues very thoroughly. We worked hard over the last 2 days to arrive at some committee consensus on these things. It would be helpful if if you respond to the public comments as your voice in the committee, okay, rather than necessarily saying, I personally disagreed with what the committee found on this, therefore I like this recommendation because I want to undo what we did in the committee meeting. You can do that if you want to. You're an individual. This is your committee, not mine. If that's how you want to react to the public comments, I can't stop you. But I'm just saying, in terms of us speaking with a voice as the committee, it's helpful if we respond to the public comments as the committee's voice. I also have to summarize what the committee's opinion and voice is to the board in a document where I summarize the public comments and our reactions to them. And if we have 6 different members of the committee giving 6 different responses to 25 different public comments, it's very hard to present that to the board as saying, well, here was the consensus of the committee's response to this. Now, that being said, if somebody in the public makes a really good point that changes your mind, okay, that really turns around your thinking on this, that really is persuasive, this is the point of the public comments. That's why they're there. You need to give yourself the freedom to change your mind on this field of study. Give yourself the freedom to remember that you need to do what's best for the students. And if the public comments convince you that we just got something wrong here, or we need to tweak it, or there's something wrong about the 4-hour, 3-hour thing, or there's something wrong about the math requirements or physics, or maybe we need chemistry, or I don't know. If somebody convinces you of this, then by all means, accept the recommendation and leave a note explaining why. And maybe if we come back to a committee, we'll have to talk about and air out those issues. So it's kind of a delicate art, the public comments. But it's all up and on the record now. Remember that your responses to the public comment are on the record. If somebody requests to see them, I will let them see them. I mean, it's all public documents here, just like our meeting is a public document. So make sure that you keep that in mind when you're doing your responses and considering your votes, okay? And the last little bit of public business, because of Public Open Meetings Act, any action or votes cast by the committee needs to be a full publicly advertised meeting to the public, blah, blah, blah. And that's awkward to do for little things like approving the minutes, okay, or for approving small changes that we make to the wording of something. So I would appreciate it if you would somebody would make a motion to authorize our co-chairs to act on the committee's behalf for committee-related business in the process of getting the field of study through the board approval process, including approving the minutes. I'll send the minutes to you for your edits and revisions, but after you've submitted those and I've made those edits and revisions, in order to keep us all having to come back to Austin, you can just authorize the co-chairs to give the go-ahead and the launch on that for you. Saves everybody a little bit of time.
I so move.
If somebody would make a motion to that effect, that would be helpful. Okay, and all in favor of that one? Okay, thank you. That kind of gives us a blank check to get business done here. Other little last bit, I sent you a expense sheet. Every year we have to give to the state government downtown an account of what committees like this are costing the state. So we need to get an estimate from you of your time and money spent on this committee, your travel expenses, your hotel, your meals, your mileage, whatever, and also an estimate of your time. My recommendation is that you hold off on that until the public comment period's over, so you can include the 2 or 3 hours that you're going to spend reviewing the public comments and writing your response. But don't forget about it, because I need to get an estimate later on. So I'll send you a reminder as time goes by. But as you submit your receipts to your supervisors back at work to get reimbursed for your expenses here, make a note somewhere on your computer to keep a little log of the time you spent here today and yesterday, and that we'll spend in the future, and then keep track of that for me for the future, all right? Okay, any other business for the good of the committee from our chairs? Or? Okay. Well, I know I speak on behalf of everybody in the committee to thank our two co-chairs and our secretary for all their hard work in the last 2 days. You did a fine job. It was a demanding job, and you did good job with it. And my thanks on behalf of the coordinating board again to all of you for coming this way and taking the time away from your coursework and committee work and research back at home. It means a great deal to us that we get this right and then we have everyone's input on it. I think you all did an extraordinary job. You have a very well-rounded, complete field of study here that I think is going to do a lot of good for a lot of students here. So again, thank you for all your help. And I will be in touch as things progress down the line. Okay? Motion to adjourn? All in favor, please rise. Excellent. All right. Thank you very much. We'll stand adjourned. And thank you to my friends in the booth who did a great job with this difficult